Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, guys, nice, good to know that. So we are about to start, just making sure everybody's already here. Not everybody yet. Okay, I think they'll come. I'm just quickly checking a couple of things in Slack chat if everybody is already online. Okay, they're still coming along. Okay, so how are you guys doing? We have Tosin, Dick, Paul, Mohammed, four right now.
I'm good.
Good. Good. Did you get a chance to review that material? I know some of you did.
I am still working on it.
Okay. I know some of you need more time to catch up. I know you're doing full-time job and
Yes.
you're doing, okay, be not sick. I'm sorry to hear. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the fact of life. Sometimes happens. But get well soon. Paul, get well soon. So what I was saying is most of us have full-time jobs and, getting through this, all the exercises that we have is, sometimes is too much. I know I put lots of things on your plate. I want you to do it. And sometimes, we don't have enough time to actually finish it off. So that has happened at least in one case where we have that day's exercise, like most of you attempted to do it. Some of you haven't actually completed it yet. But what I would like to say is that this exercise, that particular one, is going to take a little bit longer. And so what I'm suggesting is that you please try that day's exercise later. Later can be sometime in the, after DevOps finishes, or even after architecture, finishes. I will leave some time for you to actually finish it off and anything that you miss. So don't worry about this. I will add some extra time and access for you so that you will have enough ample time to finish through whatever you are working on and make it actually meaningful. So I would like this to be meaningful to you. And I will not make, I will not cut off access at this point when the course finishes. I will not do that. So don't worry. It will be available. I'll add some more time for you until you fully be able to complete all the steps that you wanted to do and get benefit from it. So I'm pretty, I need to do that. So I will do it. Don't worry about this access getting lost or something like that. I'll keep it open until you need it. Having said, let's proceed with a quick review of what we covered the other day and what we want to do today and going forward. So we started discussing briefly about DevOps. We have been talking about that Goal book, like GOAL, that book. I'm not sure how many of you actually read it, but I know quite a bit of you actually read the book summary, which is very nice. I think it's nice that you are reading it. Because I'm seeing, by the way, I'm seeing who are, if you go to that site here and you mark something complete, I get notification that you have actually marked it complete. And that's a good sign that you are reading it. So I don't have that button, but I know what button you're talking about. You had a button here. Okay, I did it. Move on to the next unit. That button pops up. And I know you have done, many of you have actually done that step, which is very nice that you have read through the summary. And there are some interesting implications of that book throughout what we do in life in general, business in particular, and computer software development, services delivery in specific. And we'll touch upon those ideas as we go along. There is this chat message apparently. I need to go check if there is a Slack chat. No, there is not. So what I was making sure that we cover is this aspect of programmable infrastructure. I know, so you have read it. I know some of you have read already all the details behind how Chef, Ansible, Puppet, CF Engine, all these tools, how they actually work. And I would like to begin with a brief overview of how Chef is constructed, how it is actually put to use in real life. The other day we did a quick exercise. and just quickly checking that we are recording this session. I'm sure you. Oh yeah, it is showing me that it is recording. So you should also check on your side, which should show that it is being recorded, which is a important thing. We need to make sure that you get the video recording after the session, which is what I want to be able to do. So we are recording this session, by the way.
Sorry, Nilesh. Is anything being shared?
I will now start sharing.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for catching it. So that is, yeah, when I start talking, I tend to lose sight on some of the very important things, such as sharing my screen. So here we go. Now I'm going to share my screen, and you should be able to see my screen now. You should also see that the session is being recorded. And what I was referring to is this aspect of programmable infrastructure, which we briefly discussed last time, but not enough. We did some brief exercise, which is not how most people use Chef or tools like that. We used it in a very primitive, rudimentary, quick and dirty way to just quickly understand what Chef is. What is it doing for us? And we discussed this idea of an outcome that we would like to establish. And this is the desired outcome. Then we specify that in form of cookbooks. And cookbooks contain recipes. And then there are lots of little things that all collectively define what the DNA would look like for the outcome. And then we take that DNA as a prescription, literally it's a prescription of how our result, our outcome should look like, shape like, function like, behave like, perform like, all of it. And that is essentially a prescription which defines what. It does not define how to do. That part is already included here. We primarily focus on what is the outcome we want. We define that outcome, and then you rely on our community with these cookbooks. Like, you remember there was this thing called a supermarket. There is a collection of cookbooks that are written for us by the community already. So we should use that resource. It's a great resource that we already have. So use it. That's what we attempted to do the other day. However, in real life, the Chef usage is slightly different than what we did. What we did the other day was a solo run of Chef on the box itself, where we want to target. So the target was running this solo run directly on the box. We are sitting on that box directly, so it is also our workstation, which is not a common usage scenario. It is nothing invalid about it, but usually the target is not your workstation. You sit on your workstation and you target the cloud, you target your data center, you target machines in your office, you target something else other than yourself, your workstation. And so in our example that we did, we ran it directly on the box where our target was the workstation itself. And that's the corner case. It is a valid case, but it is a corner case. That is not how the mainstream usage happens. So now let us understand how mainstream usage happens. In quick nutshell, it is something like this. You are sitting here. You have your workstation here. And that is where you will run something. Now this something can be whatever you want. And we'll talk more about what that something is. But in effect, this will cause Chef to run on target. What is a target? Target can be one box or huge number of boxes, wherever they belong, in the cloud, data center, your garage, in your office, whatever it is, your parents' laptops, things like that. You can just make it run wherever you want, as long as you have appropriate access permissions to run on a target. Target can be one or more, one or many. So any number of targets you want, you can have Chef run on the target. And the result is going to be get the desired outcome. That's the result. That's the result we want. Now, that's the most common dominant usage. In our example, our target and workstation was the same. In common mainstream usage, you are sitting on the workstation and you are targeting Chef run on some cloud computer somewhere. It can be any cloud, as long as it is running some operating system and you have control, and Chef runs on Windows, Unix, Mac, wherever you want. All Solaris, most operating systems are supported. You need to have access and admin privileges in Windows land or root privileges in Unix Linux land. So you need to have those privileges. You need to have access. Some key should be available to you. Port-based access should be available to you. And that, along with privileges, will let you run Chef on a target, which can be a set of machines in the cloud. And that's the common dominant usage scenario. Okay. Now, this software called Chef is an open source product, and it comes in two components. There is a thing called Chef client. This is a binary. It's an executable in Windows world. So it's a binary that executes. And in addition to that, there is a Chef server software, which is also open source. And that also runs somewhere. But typically, you need one Chef server for a project, or sometimes a team, or a department, or a company. Depending on how big that situation is, you will typically have one Chef server. That's it. It will handle like tens and thousands of target devices running and getting Chef client to deliver the desired outcome. It will handle all that. It is very lightweight. It doesn't have to do much work. This guy, Chef server, doesn't do much work. The hard work is done by this guy, the client. That thing actually executes on the target devices, target machines, and it enables desired outcome. It gets us the result we want. And that's the usage scenario. In addition to this, there is one more usage scenario and one more separate binary that I did not mention in this particular sheet of paper, but I will now mention in another sheet of paper. And that usage scenario and that separate binary is called Chef Solo. As the name implies, it does not have or need a server. I should say, does not need a Chef server. It runs by itself. It is a version of the client. The client that we discussed here, that. It is pretty similar to that, except it's a slightly different binary, and it does not need a Chef server. And that is what we used, by the way, in our very first exercise in this location. When we started that using Chef Solo, it is actually using the Solo binary, as you can see here. It is running that binary, Chef Solo, which is an executable available in that location. We can actually run it like this and say, okay, and it will run Chef Solo. And as you know, we are not given any DNA or any configuration options. So this execution will do nothing. And that is fine. And as you know, when Chef runs and you don't tell it what to do, it will do nothing and come out. So it will do nothing. And it basically did not understand what to do, could not find any cookbooks, could not find anything to do. So it did nothing, fatal. Cookbook paths not found. We don't know what to do. So it just fails and it comes out. That is expected behavior. When you run with the arguments that we want in this command, with parameters passed along to tell you where the cookbook is, and what temporary file location is, and what do you want the output to be like. That definition, if you pass it alongside, it will then run Chef Solo with these parameters and do whatever we want the outcome to be. As you remember, it does not need or require a server. We don't need one. And that is why here in this example, we did not have any. We did not need to begin with. So that is the usage scenario of Chef Solo, and it is a valid usage. It is used in large corporations. I will give you an example of a company called Joyent, which is the creators of Node.js software, by the way. And they also have a large cloud called Joyent Cloud. And that cloud, you can see somewhere here, there's a link in the reference material where I describe that there is a link where large company like Joyent is using Chef Solo in production. Ben Rockwood, who's there. Ben Rockwood, the Director of Operations. He is on YouTube. Well, you can find that YouTube, but somewhere here you will find this gentleman is actually describing how he uses Chef Solo in production in this cloud. And that was the example of a large deployment of using Chef Solo without no Chef server. You don't need it because still accomplish all the things you want. There are certain cases that are not available, but they're not really critical for every business case. So if you can get by without a server, you can. And that's how this company decided. And many other companies have used Chef Solo. Nothing wrong with it. However, some other companies prefer the other way, which is client and Chef server operating together is the other usage scenario. So we will do both. We will understand both. We will also go to the extent of first using Chef Solo ourselves. We will then use Chef client, but then it requires a Chef server. And I should not confuse anybody. I should always say the word Chef server. And so it requires a Chef server. So we will go find a service provider that gives us this for free. And we will use that. And then, since it may be free, it might be limited to its capacity as to what you can actually do. So then we will go and set up our own Chef server, which is open source. And so you can do that, open source Chef server, on your own and use that as a tool along with Chef client and get things to work the way you want. And you don't have to use this company provided service, which is, by the way, provided by chef.io. The creators of Chef software in the open source domain also provide a free version of Chef server. And we will use that, but there are certain limitations to what you can do and how many nodes can you manage and things like that. So that's the plan, that we want to go use Chef. And we will begin going deeper in terms of making sure that the usage scenario of this tool primarily comes down to the fact that we have a team. And in the team, in a company, in a department, or whatever that entity is, doing some business. And that business is responsible to deliver value to the customer. And this customer essentially is seeking, they seek value and they pay money. And so the value is provided in form of service, some service, typically software as a service, or any other thing that you provide as a service. And that team that you have here is really responsible for understanding that customer requirement and then delivering this value element to them. And you will have in the team a variety of people who develop, people who understand market, people who are testing, people who are operations, people who are sales, people who are in service. All types of people collectively together constitute that team that creates value and provide service to the customer. And so if you look at this concept of DevOps, essentially the idea is these people primarily that are, dev, test, ops, mostly some service. Marketing and sales people typically are, focused on more on the customer interaction and influencing the market, positioning, things of that nature. But some companies actually have very highly, technical salespeople and technical marketing people, so they get involved in this game also. The game is essentially understanding the customer needs and delivering them services, delivering them value that the customer seeks. That's the game. That's the game typical software company will play in delivering value to the customer. And when they are playing that game here, they need to be able to essentially create whatever they are creating. Like, you have version 0.032 of the development team creates this version of their package. They give it to test, and test will work on the same version. And then the documentation team will write documentation for the same version. And then the operations team will sometimes have a little bit older version. And, that may happen. And so as things trickle down towards the customer, as you give it to the customer, the idea is to be able to make sure that everybody is playing on the same page. Everybody is playing on the same version that you want to be able to give to the customer. And that is typically done through some kind of a source control. And source control software such as Git is what we have been using all along. So we will use Git left and right. And the benefit of everybody using the same tool set for controlling what they're doing, for managing what they're doing, essentially boils down to the fact that whatever we are creating is in harmony, in synchronization with everybody else. And at that time, if you design an infrastructure that your ultimate operations people need for the customer, that infrastructure design needs to also be inside the same Git repository for the same version that we are talking about. So if the version number changes like this, all of them are again back on the same version consistently across the board, and everybody knows what they're talking about, like this. And so everybody is in shape, in synchronous. They understand if there is an issue from customer's delivery perspective. If the customer raises a problem, the documentation team already knows what they are dealing with, this particular version number. And so they can quickly make a change all the way across the board, or maybe just quickly roll back to what it was to begin with, and just quickly go back to the version that was earlier known to be okay for the customer. And you just revert it. Putting everything that you're doing in source control helps you accomplish that. Now imagine if you are, you have a complex blueprint that you have defined, and you have it allocated, and you are using it in the context of a final service deployment. That deployment that may be working in some cloud will have some infrastructure. That infrastructure does not need to be left out of that same structure that we are talking about here. The code, the test cases, the documentation, the operations, the design, the infrastructure, all of that needs to sit together in a common location. And that basically means you're putting the infrastructure design, the architecture design, also alongside the code, the test cases, the design documents, the documentation, the specification for deployment. All of those things need to sit together in a common shared version controlled location or method. Version control is key, an important ingredient. Because without this method of controlling exactly what you're doing, it doesn't actually make sense to deliver something to the customer when you have no idea. When the developers that are developing here, they have no idea what that customer is going to be actually running it with. And without that idea, it is impossible for them to really crystal clear visualize what that environment for the customer will look like. And operations people might know because they're closer to the customer. But as you go farther away from the customer, you may not actually have a clear insight. So in fact, in modern companies, like some of the newer ones, it is imperative for a new employee that comes and joins. Give me a second. I think I have a message coming up from here. Let me see. Oh, there was not a message. So sorry about that. So what I was saying is that a new employee joins a modern software development company. The idea on his new or her new day one, on the day one, the idea is to be able to have that new employee make a change to the final deployment, final customer deployment on very day number one. Make a change in the code on the very last stage, all the way end-to-end production deployment. You are going to make a change like day one. You new hire, new employee, come on, let's make a production change. Imagine something that you hire somebody in Google, you ask them to run and make a change in gmail.com on the day one. So the actual thing that runs like this. You want a new employee that changes? I mean, are you kidding? And the answer is no. That's exactly how the idea is to be able to make that new employee productive on day one, to make a final change and push it all the way to the final deployment. This change doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be a tiny cosmetic or sometimes just a documentation change with just editing some little thing. Like that doesn't even matter too much, but it is a change. What you're effectively doing is making sure that any new employee that comes along in any part of the organization that delivers value to the customer, like we're talking about in the scenario where you have all the team members. You have coding, testing, design, documentation, specification, marketing, sales. Anybody who joins, they need to understand how the company, how the business creates and delivers value. The value delivery that happens in the company, they need to really understand at the day one. How does that change day one? How does that value get created and delivered to the customer? And they can actually start doing this thing if on the very first day they clearly know how to drive a change. The change can be tiny, like literally a text file change with a space added or space removed or some white space, just tiny little change. But the fact that you are telling and making sure that they can drive change in the entire company, drive a change for all the way to the customer on the very day one, empowers them and gives the ability for everybody to actually impact a change at some point as quickly as they can, depending on what the customer is asking for. And that you try doing that in large companies like Boeing, Microsoft, or all the big companies, like, it is impossible to actually ask for this such a thing. But smaller companies are doing it. Modern companies are also doing this kind of a thing because they have actually modernized not just their internal operations, but how their employees think about creating and delivering value to the customer. If you are not creating and delivering value, there is no point in you doing or being in the business, because that's the primary thing. And I would say the only thing the business should be doing is to deliver value. Everything else is fruitless. Don't do it. It doesn't matter. Or even if you do it, nobody counts, nobody cares, because that is the exact reason why when customers receive value, that they give money. And that is the essence of business. If you're not able to impact that value creation on the very day one, you probably will take time to ramp up, which is not what we want. So be as productive as quickly as you can, and those things can happen only when the entire team that you have, all the team members, stakeholders, they are driving their work in form of some version control, which is most commonly Git and tools like Chef, your cookbooks, your recipes, whatever that you have in your working folder, you will put all of that in a Git repository. You will put your code that your developers write in the same Git repository. You will put your test cases, test plans, end-to-end test infrastructure, all of that again in the same Git repository. Your infrastructure designs, they will go to the same repository. So the essential idea is all of us in the team on a given product are working in harmony in a critically controlled, version controlled infrastructure for everything you do for the customer. That's the core idea. Now, in the example that I want to be able to play next, which is, excuse me, I'm assuming you have read through this modules number 1 through 5, because I know I have seen many of you actually finish through the buttons to click through, and that is something that I would like to briefly touch upon, this idea of thick clients and thin servers, which is the same idea I discussed early on, which is, where is it? My notability paper there. So the idea is your client for Chef client does heavy lifting work. Chef server does not. That is one thing you need to remember, very light work. All the heavy work is here. And this heavy work actually happens on the target machines. It does not happen on your workstation. By the way, this runs on the target machines in the cloud. This runs on some box somewhere in your company, one box. Maybe a big box, maybe a small box, or maybe one box in some cloud. That is where it works. This thing runs, and that's pretty much it for most practical cases. And you do not, you're not using this box directly, you're not on the target machines, but you sit somewhere away in your office, or maybe in Hawaii on your workstation on a beach. And from there, you're influencing the client runs. These clients will actually do the heavy work. They will run on target machines. And it really doesn't matter where your location is, because you can be anywhere as long as you can connect. And you have the access control and privileges and the ability to run Chef client. You can make it happen no matter where you are in the world. And you can make things run exactly the way you and your team members want it to function. And that is some of the additional exercises I will be actually running right now with you. And I intend to take them right here. The one I want to actually do next is this module number 6 is what I want to do. But before I jump into that, I just want to quickly highlight the 3 types of keys and secrets that you may be running into. I think you know this already, but I'm just recapping. This type of key is classically the key you generate with this SSH keygen command. It generates IDRSA pub. We have used it before. It's a private key, public key combination. It looks like that. This kind of a key is useful for connecting one machine to another through some protocol, and that protocol is typically SSH. And to be able to connect like this, you need the private key. And the public key needs to be sitting here, the corresponding public key. And if you have that private key, you provide it to the command for SSH from this one machine, you can connect to the another machine as long as your key is authorized. If you are authorized _keys listed in that file, if your public key is listed, it will let you connect. That's the primary method of connecting in the example that you may have done multiple times by now. So that's one type of key that you know. These are the access control keys to connect to remote machines. And I'm basically going over this because it can cause some confusion as we go along forward. The second type of key that you know is this type of key called account control or credentials for the company that gives you cloud services. So here is an example of Amazon Web Services access credentials. They also call it access key and secret key. And so this is an example that you may have seen before. This is how it looks like. And you can generate a key pair from Amazon, and this gives you access to the cloud, all of it here. You can control using this key pair, access key and secret key. This key pair is different from the IDRSA key type that you saw before. Like this is a different case. This type of key pair is keys to connect to cloud providers. You can connect to this cloud provider using the Amazon key, to this cloud provider using the token here, which I have deleted, and I can generate another one. You've seen it before. Here is a token. That long character sequence that you have here is a token which gives me access to read and write on that cloud. And I can get rid of that token if I don't want it. As simple as that. I can generate a token anytime I feel like and delete it after I'm done. That kind of a key, is like here as an example of DigitalOcean token, is used to connect to DigitalOcean Cloud. Here is an example key for connecting to the Rackspace API. So Rackspace API gives you API key. They call it API key. And so list goes on. For every cloud, there will be some method of connecting to the cloud programmatically. And like in IDRSA and IDRSA.pub, the method is to connect between machines, one machine to another. In the case of cloud keys, you are connecting from your software that runs on your workstation, and you are connecting to some cloud. It is not a machine in the cloud. It is the cloud itself. The company Amazon, the company DigitalOcean, the company Azure, the company Google, the company Rackspace. You're basically accessing the entire stack of services these companies provide by using what they call is API keys. Sometimes they have a different name for it, but essentially these are also keys, and sometimes they are key pair. Sometimes it's a token. And that method, you are connecting to the cloud itself, not a machine in the cloud, but account-wide access. And these keys, if you lose, if you somehow manage to expose them to other people, bad people might take your key pair and abuse it. And your credit card will be getting a charge. So remember that. If you manage to lose your token, your credit card will rack up large bill from DigitalOcean. If you lose this token, DigitalOcean might charge you for using their services, because the bad guys will take that token, run random software on this cloud, and you will get that bill. And you don't want to receive a surprise. So you want to protect your token. You want to protect your key pair. The best way to delete the key pair, delete the token after you're done, generate a new one next time. That's the best way. Just disable it or delete it. And that is how I recommend taking extra precaution on your cloud access key pair. Do not let go of your tokens, key pairs, and your secrets for accessing the cloud. You will get surprised with a huge bill. And I am personally acknowledging that I have been guilty of that, and I have received a $561 bill from Amazon, and you can see it if you don't believe me, right there, here. And trust me, it happens. It happens to me, it happens to anybody, it can happen, and this will happen because, and so here is a history. You can see that it was a long time ago, I guess, so I may have lost that history. But there are still some traces of it. Like, for example, I still have that credit they gave me back. So there is this credit applied. Unexpected usage, $543.32. I got a shock of my life. One fine morning, I woke up and I am seeing that my Amazon cloud is running 20 instances, the biggest possible size you can think of, in every region you can imagine. Every region. So go to EC2, and I see in Oregon, I see 20 running instances of the biggest possible size. I mean, honest to God. And I was shocked. And I see that it is all running Windows, which I never run, by the way. It's running Windows, the biggest possible size you can, in not just Oregon, Virginia, California, Ireland, Frankfurt, everywhere, 20 machines in every region. And that was raking up a bill in the amount of $600 per hour. And I quickly noted that. And the first thing I did was to destroy my access keys. And the second thing I did was go region by region and terminate the machines I saw. And third thing I did is to report to Amazon. And that is what I have run it into myself. I don't want you to get into that situation. So please, please delete your keys when you're done with it. Otherwise you are going to, and it's good that I caught the whole thing in 1 hour or less. I have seen other people complaining about this, where they raked up in one day $5,000 worth of, and you know what's going on under the covers? People are looking for your keys on GitHub. Sometimes you accidentally push your content that contains Git, that Git contains your credentials, which is not what you want. And that is how bad guys are actually crawling on GitHub for repositories that contain your credentials, like these things, tokens, or these access key and secret key. They'll actually search for it. If they search, they find something, they test it out, and if they test it, the test validates, they'll immediately programmatically start what is known as Bitcoin mining. And you can do Bitcoin mining on the cloud as long as you don't have to pay. It's a great way of making quick money because somebody else is paying, you just happen to use the machines. So you can actually mine Bitcoin on the cloud if you are not going to be responsible for making that payment, like here. And so that is why I bring it up. Do not like lose your key. That is something that you don't want to do. It will rake up charge and you may not be able to catch it in time, which will be unfortunate. So that's the second type of key. Then there's a third type of key, and that key pair is actually there are two PEM files. One file is called a personal PEM. The other file is organizational PEM, and we will use this file primarily to connect to the Chef server that you will have. So you will have your own Chef client running and connecting to some Chef server somewhere. And that connection is authorization server. It happens that communication, authentication, and authorization happens through two PEM files. And so we will have them separately dealt with. We'll take care of them separately. But that is a third type of key that you will find useful, and I would like you to be aware of that. We will get to that type of file at some point in time as soon as we reach that step. We have done module number 5, which is running Chef in solo mode, and we have also modified the cookbook to use Nginx. I would like to see if there are any questions on that topic. I know it's like 3 or 4.
Nilesh Anand here. I have a stupid question. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But let's say they stole your keys, right? I mean, they were launching.
Sorry, there are no stupid questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, they were launching all those 20 instances on your name in AWS, right?
Yes.
But what were they supposed to get? Just, what will be their gain on that,
They were running Bitcoin mining operation.
Got it now. Yeah, just wanted to, got it, yeah.
Okay. So they were making money from here, and I was paying for their machines.
Okay, got it.
So it's if you have a case where you are getting a very low price machine or a collection of machines, you can actually, in theory, start Bitcoin mining on the cloud and convert that into Bitcoin and then make money. I mean, actually create profit. That is possible in theory. But what happens is, as you start creating profit from Bitcoin, this is your cost, and this is what you generate. And so as long as this Bitcoin value you create is more than the cost that you spend, then profitable.
Right, yeah.
And so, say for example, in theory, it is profitable at some point, in theory. So what will happen is that people will find out that it is actually profitable to mine Bitcoin like this. So they will come in large numbers and start mining Bitcoin, which will make profit for them. And as a consequence, what will happen is that the demand for the machines in the cloud, say Amazon Web Services, will go up. Demand goes up, the price will also go up, which means this number will become bigger, which means the profit will go away, right? It will equalize. And then it doesn't really make sense to do Bitcoin mining unless you're stealing, unless the cost is zero. If the cost is zero, Bitcoin is a great way of making profit because you're basically stealing other people's infrastructure. But economically, it is not really profitable. In theory, it can be. In certain corner cases, it can actually generate profit. But as soon as you find out that this is smaller than the Bitcoin it generates, then other people will also come and they will also generate Bitcoin, and slowly the cost will go up. And then, it can even go higher to a bigger number. And then it will not remain profitable at all. And that is the economic force that you're seeing. More people come, the cost of the machines will go up. That will happen. In dynamic pricing, you can see Amazon has a dynamic pricing model for certain kinds of machines. And we'll talk more about that when we discuss pricing and how to make use of these things in the third segment. But that's the summary idea. It will equalize at some point and people will not use it anymore. It doesn't make sense. But today may be a good day when, I don't know what Bitcoin pricing has changed, whether depending on Brexit and Bitcoin, see if there is an impact. Bitcoin value surges as British pound tanks on Brexit. See that? So Bitcoin has surged, which means it might be profitable today, maybe tomorrow, but that's it. Excuse me. It might be profitable today. Who knows? I have not actually seen or run some comments, but it actually, let's see what the value of Bitcoin versus USD. Bitcoin versus USD. What is the price today? So it has, it used to be high. In fact, in 2014, it used to be as high as $1,000. But as late as today, it has shot up a little bit because of this thing called Brexit. Now, in 2014, I know of one case when somebody bought a Tesla for 97 Bitcoins. And someone bought a $100,000 Tesla for 97 Bitcoins. So that was this case. So that was history back in 2014. But yeah, markets fluctuate, and today is one of such days. So we can see how it might shape up, but don't go waste time and effort in doing this thing right now. It doesn't make sense. It is not economical to run it on the cloud to mine Bitcoin, generally speaking. It may be economical if you do it in your garage and you have free electricity and you are doing it in your garage where it is automatically cooled, because we live in a cooler area. So in those cases, yes, there are possibilities where you can actually mine Bitcoin and make some money, a little bit. Okay. So my question to you about this project, this exercise using Nginx, did you succeed in modifying that? I know 3 of you did, but are there any questions on this modification as to what it actually does to us in the example that we were playing with, which is we had this example here using Chef Solo. And in the example, if you take a look, you will find that it uses Apache Cookbook. Like all these references are Apache. So if you modify those references to say Nginx, then it will not work. If you run it like this, it will fail. So let's go try it out. If you run it the same way, hold on, let me run it. Sudo run Chef Solo, it will fail. Let's see why it will fail. Because Nginx is not known, right? Oh, I did not type sh. So Nginx is not known, so it will fail. We don't know what Nginx is. We don't know what to do with it because I just modified it. I said Nginx, but just modifying here without actually providing the cookbook is not going to help you. It will gladly fail for you and tell you, I don't understand what you mean. And that is what is expected. It'll complain just like that. Huh? Is there a stale copy of Nginx cookbook somewhere? Looks like in my machine somewhere it picked up a stale copy of the package and it finished and it actually did the whole thing on Nginx, but it should have failed, but looks like it found something from a previous iteration, previous run. So the quick short summary is you need to provide that cookbook right in that folder. In the cookbooks folder, it needs to have the Nginx cookbook. How do you bring it? You go to the supermarket like this, supermarket, and in that supermarket, you will find, okay, Chef Supermarket. And so in the Chef Supermarket, you will go find Nginx cookbook like this, download it, place it in the right location, which is that location we want, which happens to be this using Chef Solo. And cookbooks location, that is where we want Nginx cookbook to be located. So we'll kill this one. We'll say move it to trash. We'll keep the main cookbook. We want to get the Nginx cookbook. So we will download it, place it in that location. And so here is the download button, the cookbook from Mike the Man, download it. It'll bring down this Nginx TGZ, you save it, and you save it in the downloads folder, which is where it goes. And so in that downloads folder, you will find it. You will just right click and expand, open with Archive Manager, and that's the Nginx folder. You want to drag it out like this here and place it. And this should extract all the components. They will come out. And now you have the Nginx folder. You want to take this folder away from here. And you cut it basically. You cut, go to your home, go to using Chef Solo, cookbooks, and there you paste it like this. So now we have our cookbooks replaced. You remove Apache, you put Nginx in there. And you also want to remove any Apache instances that you might have. The reason you want to remove Apache, sudo apt-get remove Apache 2, is that you want to make sure that Apache is completely out of this machine. Otherwise, Nginx and Apache will compete for the same port. They will all be going to the same port, which is port number 80. And we don't want them to be competing. So I am basically saying that I want to remove Apache completely, which is what I'm doing right now. So it should show us that we do not have Apache. Like ps-ef should not show you any Apache process. Right now it doesn't, which is nice. let us see if you have our sudo sh run chef solo running again. And we'll run that one more time, and it should confirm that Nginx is now running. We should able to go here and open localhost. After that run finishes, we should be able to go to localhost and show Nginx running the same thing. That's what you will see because our previous run already succeeded. So we have it running already, so it will do nothing. So all it did was basically nothing. So it finished out very quickly. And if you go check sudo ps-ef5 grep nginx, you will find nginx processes running right there. And these guys are basically responsible for showing you what you saw here in the localhost scenario. So essentially what we just did is modified this recipe to say, you know what, I want Nginx, or I want Apache 2, or something like that. I can change these things depending on what I want to accomplish. And this is what I call defining what your outcome is. I want that package to be installed, started, and enabled. That's the outcome you define in this plain recipe. You put that in your main cookbook, and then here in dna.json, you call the default recipe in the main cookbook. You can write, actually, you can write this step like this also to be very, very clear. And that's how you can also write to be clear that, you know what, go to the main cookbook and run the default recipe in the main cookbook. That is also a valid representation. However, this part is optional. If you don't write anything, it implies that you want to run the default recipe in the main cookbook. That's what it automatically means if you don't say anything after the main word like this. If you happen to have another recipe, such as not default, but something else, like do nothing recipe, for example. So I'll create a new file here. I'll call it do nothing. And I can, in theory, go and say do nothing. And so in that scenario, you will see that the do nothing recipe kicks in inside the main cookbook, and then it will do nothing. Because it has nothing, it will do nothing. The file is blank, so it will do nothing. And that's the scenario where you're looking at in terms of modifying simple parameters, defining the outcome that you want in form of a DNA. And that was this exercise. Having done that exercise, what I would like to next do is remove that Nginx from here. So I have to get rid of that Nginx also for a subsequent exercise, because we'll mess with this machine sometimes. We'll play with other machines. Sometimes we'll go to some cloud and play with that cloud. And that's what these exercises are coming along. So I'll walk you through these exercises. But the idea is that I would like you to also run these exercises, and I would like it to be interactive. If you want to run that next exercise, which is actually module number 6, it is quite elaborate, and you're more than welcome to do it along. There's a question there. Go ahead. You got a question?
Nilesh, this is Salam.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good, sir.
Okay, I have questions about the syntax you use, auto remove. So what it does, like, is it all the time when you remove any like Apache or Nginx, do I have to, or this is a best practice to use auto remove syntax also? Well, if you can explain to that auto remove what it does, what is remove?
Yeah. So you see my screen there, right? Sudo apt-get auto remove.
Right.
Why? And then I'm describing what it does. It removes any dependencies that are not needed anymore.
Dependencies of
so like
Nginx or Apaches.
Yeah, Nginx might require something else, so it may have brought it down. you don't want it, so you get it. So it will automatically remove other things that are not needed. For example, it removed Nginx core, Nginx common, whereas in a previous step, I already uninstalled Apache Nginx, right? So you remember this? In here, I say remove Nginx. So it did, but it said the following packages were automatically installed and are no longer required.
Okay.
So use apt-get auto remove to remove them.
Got it.
So that is what I did. I used apt-get auto remove.
So you clean that syntax, clean everything, any dependencies left over.
Yeah. So there were these two things left over. You want to remove them. So
All right.
So
I can use this syntax for any other case too, right?
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay.
It will tell you to use it. When it finds something that needs to be removed, you can remove it like that. And so I just removed it. And so it removed these two things. It automatically picked up the leftover that are no longer required. And so
that's great. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that was this. Now let us get rid of that folder, which we are not using anymore. So I am going to get rid of this using Chef Solo folder. So in our exercise that we did in this folder, we can get rid of it or just leave it alone. Every time we are doing this, we are doing it in a separate folder so that we don't have to delete that folder, but instead remember that we should work in some folder that you never work in, like .ssh folder. You don't go there, don't work there. So that is something you should remember. Always remember where you are currently working. Like for example, the user is in tilde, which is home location. So if you go to say using Chef Solo, it will tell you the user is in that location. And that is the location for that particular exercise. And so that is what we were using, but now we are not using that one. So we should come out of that folder by running cd, enter. CD will bring us back to home location. And so anytime we are doing some exercise, and there are tons and tons of it, by the way, coming. So you might have to actually remember which exercise you are doing in which folder. And that is something you need to remember. And so when you're doing that, you need to remember to go into that exercise folder and operate in that folder. If you stay somewhere else, it will not work. So we will proceed ahead beyond this Nginx step that we did and go to the next step, which is using Chef Solo and is using Chef in solo mode, but in elaborate examples. So that is what we intend to do. And we will talk about a variety of little things that come along the way. I will explain to them what these things mean, like we have up until now discussed a couple of things, such as a folder where we work. And so in that folder, we had a unique folder called cookbooks. And inside that folder, we had a folder called recipes. That's where we will store our recipes. So, excuse me. Recipes is a method of things that describe how to do certain things or what. These aspects of how and what can be defined in a recipe, and a collection of recipes essentially become a cookbook. And so that cookbook can have a name such as Apache too. And the cookbook itself is sitting in a folder at even higher level called cookbooks. So in the cookbooks folder, there will be a cookbook for some name. Inside, we will have some recipes, and these recipes define how and what. There are some attributes and several other things that you will come and see. And you will have more cookbooks like Nginx cookbook or something like a cookbook I made, and I called it main cookbook, in which we had a recipes folder. And inside there, we had a file called default.rb which had the exact thing that I wanted it to happen. So the scenario is you will have recipes, you will have names of cookbooks, and you will put all of them in a folder called cookbooks. And there will be lots of such little folders like cookbooks. Or we will come up with more. And as we go more and give you examples, I will then describe what these things are. But these are very intuitive. So the idea is very simple to understand. The key thing to remember is to remember which folder you are working on, because that step you don't want to miss. You want to remember to stay in the folder you're working on. And so we will start doing some examples to help you comprehend some of the capabilities of this thing. So here begins the next exercise. And by the way, whatever you store all these things in, this cookbooks and this and that, all of that is, people call it with different names. And so like, you know, people who cook work in the kitchen, right? And so that's why it is customary to call your working folder as kitchen. So they use the word kitchen for the folder, and they just call it, go to your kitchen to work. And that's the idea, is to be in the working folder where you're working. And so that is the kitchen, which is the top level folder for a project on which you will have cookbooks and other things. So you will put all these things here, and that becomes your kitchen where chef, like, you know, like you are chef and you are a cook. And so that's where you will work. And that's where this word kitchen comes from. A similar word like this is also known as a chef repo, repository for using chef. That word is also used occasionally. And so you will find references on the internet. Most of it is on the internet. There is, well, people will say chef repo, people will talk about kitchen. That's what you will see is as the usage evolves. And so the core idea is to use and always work inside your kitchen. Another key idea for the purpose of this program is to use the Cloud Genius workstation. By the way, many of you have Macintosh computers, and I know it will work in the Macintosh just fine, no problem, without much trouble. But I recommend that you leave your Mac alone. Leave your Mac alone, don't mess with it. No mess, keep it clean. The reason we have this workstation is to make a mess. And so we will make this mess, whatever we want inside this machine, do whatever you want with it. And when you're done with it, delete it and create it again. And so it's not a big deal. It does not hurt. Whatever you want to do, do it here. You want to delete things, go ahead. Basically do whatever you feel like. It's a sandbox. You experiment here, you learn here. If you start playing with your Mac, you might cause a problem, and you don't want to cause a problem because you're learning, you're likely to make mistakes. I would rather have you make mistakes inside this workstation, inside the Cloud Genius workstation, which is this machine. That's where you want to work and make mistakes. Don't work on the Mac. I know it will work in the Mac comfortably, and you're more than welcome to use the Macintosh after the program is over. No problem. And I'll help you, and I'll guide you if you want as to how to use Macintosh directly, so you don't have to deal with this workstation and VirtualBox and all that. You can just directly use the Macintosh if you like, but for the program, please use this workstation. Having said, we need to create a kitchen. And the kitchen basically is a folder. In our example that's coming up, we'll call it My Cloud. So we'll create a folder. We'll call it My Cloud. Or rather, mkdir My Cloud. I'll make the font a little bigger. So there we go. So mkdir My Cloud. And that is the folder that I want to work in. So I will go inside that folder. And remember, the user is in My Cloud. So I want to use this entire exercise in that folder. If I'm not in that folder, nothing will work. So go back here always when you're doing this exercise, You want to be inside that folder. That is where we want to create. Anything we want to do is going to be inside that folder. Okay. Now comes the next concept, which may be new to those who are not Ruby programmers, but it is not a complex concept. And therefore, I will explain it in very simple words. And that idea that I want to talk about next is called a gem file. And we'll describe that briefly. So we have a kitchen to work with now. And what we want to be able to use is the Ruby language, which, by the way, has ready-made packages. Ready-made packages for us to use. Like, you know, we had this supermarket. We went to the supermarket and grabbed whatever we want in terms of cookbooks. In Ruby language, there are these ready-made packages available in form of Ruby gems, and they are open source. So you can just download them and use it. And these gems are available for open source usage on a site called rubygems.org. So you just go to the Ruby Gems site and grab whatever you want, and there's the site, Ruby Gems. And here it is. So here you can find any gem you feel like. And there are how many gems? Oh, no, how many downloads? I cannot even type this. 8 billion downloads. It's hugely popular community. I mean, it's mind-boggling. The amount of people that contribute to this is mind-boggling. I mean, I'm not kidding. Twitter and GitHub are written in Ruby. So GitHub is Ruby. And so it used to be Twitter. Now it is not Ruby, but all these big sites are actually constructed using Ruby and Rails. Rails is also a Ruby gem. You can see that Rails is a gem written by this guy. Where is he? This guy. And so this guy wrote Ruby gems. This guy wrote Rails as the gem. He has created 45 gems. His name is DHH. And he's a well-known personality. His full name is David, I cannot even say his last name, Heimir Hansen. And he lives in Chicago, works for this, creates this company called Basecamp. The previous name of the company was 37 Signals. And so he's a very well-known, highly respected person. And he created Rails, and this Rails gem is one such gem which has been downloaded 69 million times. For this version, 1 million times. The version number 426, that version. So that's what his gem is, and his source code is available back on GitHub, on Rails. And that's where you can find that there are 58,000 commits, 3,000 contributors, 12,000 forks, 31,000 stars. So it's a gigantic project. That gem right here, Ruby Gems on this site. Any gem you like, it's probably already available. So just use it. That's how we are going to do. So ready-made packages available for us to use, Ruby Gems. We don't want to write code all over, because we are going to stand on other people's shoulders, giants, shoulder of giants. So we want to do that. These are great people out there in the industry helping everybody else out. So why not make use of and thank them? And for that purpose, we are going to use these gems in order for us to succeed in what we want to accomplish. Ready-made code, ready-made package written in Ruby, Ruby Gems. And that's what a gem is. We want to get that. And how do you get a gem? You want to specify, but you can go to the site and download a Ruby gem if you like, but there is an easier way to get these gems. And by the way, these gems, people keep updating. Like, you know, you saw this example of Rails gem. Rails gem is the one that you used in Heroku exercise, by the way. It has this version 426, and it has 284 versions in the last few years. 284 versions. So it has started all the way down in 2004. Not few years, but more than 10 years. So yeah, that's where this version came along, and now we have version 5 coming up soon. So the stable version is version 4.26, March 2016, as late as March. So versions change and you don't want to get surprised. So you want to lock down every gem with a version number very, very clearly. If you don't do that, you will get randomized. That's a problem in the open source. You don't want to get randomized because things move so rapidly. You will have no idea when the version underlying changed. And so you want to lock the version numbers so you do not get randomized. Don't want this. We want to use gems. We want to know and use exactly what we like, but we don't want to get randomized. So we lock the version number and every single gem that we intend to use in a project. And that is what gem file does. It's a file. It contains list of names of gems and the version number. So I want Rails gem and I want 426. Great. You got it. That's how the list is. It's basically a list. Name, version, name, version, name, version. If you do not specify a version, you are bound to get screwed at some point because somebody will randomize you. The version number will change and it will surprise you when your project will be screwed. You don't want that. Things will change, you want to change, but then you want to change in an organized fashion. That is why it is important to lock. And that is what this file helps you do that. And you may have heard, open source, anybody might change anything anytime they feel like, and how do I use in the company? These fears are, I have heard these things myself directly, but these fears are unfounded. You are afraid of version changes because you don't know how to lock. But if you are disciplined about locking to exact versions that you want to use, nobody can touch your project. Even if they will change the version numbers here, you don't have to change 426. You just freeze on that one and stay right there. You don't have to move. No need to move unless you want to move, in which case you will voluntarily come here and say, I want 5, and that is okay because you control the randomization is not there. Nobody randomizes you. Open source is very disciplined and your control is with you. So gem file is that file that I want to create for you. And this is the first gem file we'll create.
Okay, Nilesh, could you show us how to lock?
How to lock?
Yeah.
You lock it by putting a number.
Putting my number like...
like this. I want to use Chef 1203.
Okay, version number.
Yeah. I want to use Berkshire 401. I want to use Knife Solo 4042. That's what
That's called the lock.
No.
So when I put the version number?
It is not called a lock. It is called a version number.
Version number, okay. So I specified this is a specific version I'm going to be running in.
Yes. So you will take these version numbers in the very first example that we are going to do now. You will copy them, bring it here, open Atom Editor in the current folder, My Cloud. And
so I have a question, Nilesh.
Yes, please.
How do you know what version you want since there are so many options out there?
Good question. And if I am new on a project, I will ask my other team members who may be already familiar with something that they know works. And I will begin with using that version. If I have no idea, if I have absolutely no idea what to use, I will go to GitHub and find out the latest stable version. So I am on GitHub, let me go to GitHub. So here is the Rails source code. Let me go there. So Rails source code, and I will pull down the branches and look at the tags and find out RC, release candidate, RC, beta, 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 beta. Okay, there it is, 426. Bingo, that's the version I want. This is a stable indicator. So I will use that. Or if I want to be really conservative, I will go one step below and maybe go to say 4.1.15, that one. If not, I will go down even further and all the way to an older gem, which is for version 3.2.22.2, that one. And that gem, 3.2.22.2, is February 26. It is not old, it is just stable. This is February 26, 4 months ago. This version 3.2.22.2 is not ancient. It might look ancient to you, but it is updated as late as February 26, 2016. So that is how you will look at whether this version will be more appropriate, or maybe version 4.2.6 is more appropriate. You will try both of them, identify your business requirements and identify what will work for you and tweak it accordingly. You will change these numbers depending on what you want and know works for your team, for your customer. And that is how you come up with these version numbers. You don't randomly choose. If you have no idea, just go to the GitHub, find out the latest, stable, and use it. If it doesn't work, identify why it doesn't work, and then get to work it. Get it to work in a working order. And then when you know what versions numbers work, that you write them down in this file, bring them here in the Atom editor, open the MyCloud folder right there. Atom will open soon. In that Atom editor, I will create a new file. That new file is going to be called gem file. And in that file, I will paste these things and save. It will be saved in the MyCloud folder, and I will call it gem file. That's the name without any extension. There is no extension here. I will name it gem file with a capital G in the MyCloud folder and save. That is my gem file I just created. How do I come up with these numbers? Through experience, I know for this exercise, I have chosen these version numbers for this particular exercise. And that is my choice. And I have come up with these numbers through experience. I know this will work. I know other things might work, but these things absolutely will work. That is why I have chosen these versions. You may know that Chef is also a gem, which means you can go here on the RubyGems site. And in RubyGems, if you search for Chef as opposed to Rails, Chef is also a gem. And the Chef version number is 12.11.18 as late as June 2016. So that version, I know it might work. I have nothing wrong or nothing against it, but I have chosen this version 12.03, that version. That's my choice. And you will see that I will change my choices over time in other exercises. I will randomly change to some other version. This is basically to give you this perspective that you get to control what versions you want in your project. I know I can change it very easily to 12.11.18 just like this, but that is not the point. That may not be the case I actually want to do, because this thing is like a few days old. This is June 8, and today is what, June 24. So it's like few days. I haven't even had time to test it. So why should I rush to get the latest? Not at all. There is no reason to inflict that pain on all of you by throwing you at this version. If I do that without testing it, and I just let you do this exercise with this 12.11.18, and if it fails, it will cause you trouble, which I don't want. I want you to actually succeed in the very first time you run. That is why I give you these versions. I know that this will work. I know that this might work. So the other things that you see here, like 12, 11, 18, that might also work. But I have not had time to actually test. That is why I choose what I have chosen. And that is my gem file. Now, with that gem file, it gives us a sense of discipline. And that is an important thing to have. Because what you really want to accomplish in the scenario of using in a large team, and you want to have everybody, developers, testers, operations people, documentation people, everybody who's using, they need to use 12.03. Do we all understand? Yes, everybody understands? Yes, yes, yes. Now we will know exactly what works across the board in the whole company. Otherwise, these guys are using 12, 11, 18 because they are very, they think that they are very agile, nimble, and they're able to take this change as soon as it publishes, like June 8, I am going to grab it. Oh no, no, you stick to this one. Everybody understand that, you know what, we want to do this update a version. We will try that in a separate sandbox, see how it works, see everybody gets comfortable with it. And when everybody is comfortable, you will change it globally for the whole team to switch away from this number to this new number, and that is okay. But then at that time, everybody in the team is using that version. And that is totally, totally great. Nothing wrong with that approach. But don't arbitrarily change a version number in one part of the organization, because you all want to operate as a team. And the team delivers value to the customer. And that is what you should be using together, synchronously, and make sure that they all cooperate and be on the same page when it comes to providing value to the customer. Some people who think they are smart might want to jump to the latest. May not be a good idea unless they can prove it to everybody that it is a good idea. Then everybody moves, and that's okay. But don't just assume that latest is the best. That is not the case. It from Windows. Like I used to joke about it because I used to work on that team. Latest Windows is not the best Windows you can think of. Like a bit older Windows is probably much more stable, much more supported across the board in the industry, in operating, other software will work on it just fine. You know this from experience. And that is probably true in just every software, not just Windows. I'm blaming Windows because it's fun to blame Windows, but that's not the idea. The idea is every new software that comes out from anywhere may not be ready because everybody else is probably lagging behind. So you might have Adobe may not work on latest Windows 10 point, whatever they have these days. Adobe may not work, and that causes disappointment. And Office works because Office is a product from Microsoft, so it might actually work. But then Adobe doesn't work, and then my custom plugin I have for my special project, no, doesn't work. I need to go back to Windows 7. Ouch. And so these things are important to customers because they might have some special project going on that requires something special. So you want to test it thoroughly across the board for every use case of the customer's perspective and not just jump on the latest. So that is what we are essentially trying with the use of a gem file. Lock it down, put that in Git control, in version control. In this file needs to go in version control. That's what we will do soon. So we have that gem file. Now at this time, this file alone doesn't do anything. It will not go to this Ruby gem site magically and bring down these gems for us unless we tell it to do so. And how do we tell this thing to work? Like I just said, I would like you to go to that location. So I would like you to go to that source location and grab these gems for these versions for me and put them for my use. That's the command I want to actually tell, go do it for me. Go to that location, grab these things, come back and tell me you did. Now, there is a command for that, by the way. So that command is what I want to run. The command is called bundle. That's the command name. And so we'll run it like this, bundle. and it will run in that location. We'll just run it bundle, and it will go and do whatever it takes. And it, you know what, it goes to this location. If you happen to be a company that does not want to go to rubygems.org, but you want to stay inside your company for gems, that is also okay. You just have to rename it to, say, myairplanecompany.com, right? So that becomes your airplane company. And your airplane company decides to keep everything in your control. So that becomes a source where you distribute and you control the version of gems that your company will use. But then you need to have your own distribution of gem in that location. So in that My Airplane Company, you have to have your own gems available to your developers internally. And that's how you will regulate. So you will tell everybody, you know what? We are not going to go to that Ruby Gems site, but we will go our internal site. That is okay. That's totally fine. You just have to communicate that and make this work like Ruby Gems does. Make this work like this site, and that is totally fine. Editor crashed. Okay, close window. I don't know why it crashed. I think I clicked on the button something, but let's kill it. It doesn't respond for some reason. Okay, the machine crashed, it seems. Okay, I need to kill that machine then. So machine, shut down, machine, reset. Okay, the machine is reset, and I'm going to go back. And what I want to be able to do is run bundle. So I will do that. I think the machine crashed in the middle of a bundle run because I changed the URL. That's what I think just happened. But I should not have changed the URL, and I accidentally saved it for some reason. Silly. So waiting for the machine to come back. But these 3 gems is what I want to grab from that site, and then they become available. So that's what I will do. I will go back to that same location, which is where I was working on, which is also called my kitchen, by the way. So I'll go to my kitchen. My kitchen is called My Cloud. And in that kitchen, I have this Atom editor open. And in the same kitchen, I will run bundle command. So this My Airplane code is bad. I want to put that thing back in its place. That's why it crashed. It should not crash, by the way, but it did. So we'll save it again, close it, bundle again now. So bundle, and this bundle command will go to that location here and fetch the version metadata from that site and fetch the dependency metadata. You will see that there are tons of other gems that are coming down in addition to those 3 that I mentioned in this file. There are 3 gems mentioned, but then this thing seems to be downloading a ton of other gems like Rake, Addressable, Multi-Part Post, HTTP Client, Buff Extensions, Hashi, Buff Ruby Engine, HI Times, blah, 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 goes on. And these gems are dependencies. So they are also coming down. They are needed for these 3 to work correctly. So we are bringing those gems down and building those things. By the way, on your machine, if you have a computer with more than like 4 or 8 GB, if your physical machine is like 8 GB RAM, your current VirtualBox has allocation of 1 GB RAM. I would like you to be generous and see if you can increase this number. If you can do it 4 GB RAM, that will be very nice for yourself. It will make things smooth. You don't have to. It will struggle, but it will work. Like right now, it is struggling because my RAM is actually limited to 1 GB. You can see my RAM is 1024. I should increase that to make it smoother. At least I should do it so that all of you don't get this sluggish experience that you are getting right now. So this sluggishness will go away in the VBox if your RAM is more. Just be generous if you can. You don't have to be. If this is the case, you can possibly give 4 to this guy, and that will make a better experience for you. If you don't have 8, you probably cannot give 4. In that case, just give whatever you can. But I'm just saying, if you have 4, you can probably give it 2, or maybe 1.5. So budget it, give some love. That's what this machine is asking for, is love. Love comes in form of RAM. So that error occurred while installing because of RAM failure. Very likely, I think it is RAM, but I would like to make sure that it is correct. I was suspicious of that actually, as I was noticing it is building something, which is what I was suspecting. So I'm going to fix that error by shutting down the machine, adding some RAM, and restarting it up. That might happen to you. If this happens, if this fixes it, I will update the VirtualBox image so that you don't have to run into that issue. And you will see that a new OVA file comes down, so you don't have to build these things. You will see that I am going to restart the machine. And when the machine shuts down, I will add more RAM and then build it. It will succeed at that time. And like you're seeing me, I am actually adding RAM right now. I'll bring it up in foreground so you can see what I'm doing. So it is coming up in foreground right now. I am adding some memory to that machine. So system, memory, I'm adding it 8192. I'm being very generous. So I'm giving it 8 GB RAM to the virtual machine to just expedite the whole thing. And processor, I want to give it like 2 CPUs or maybe 3. So making it really generous for it to expedite its work. And now I'm going to start that V machine again, virtual machine. And this time it should succeed. If for some reason it still fails, what I intend to do is to fix that issue and create a new VirtualBox, which is what I will distribute in form of this workstation folder that you know already. So, you are very familiar with this idea of a virtual workstation OVA file that looks like this, right? That's the file that you created this virtual machine from by importing it. I will update that OVA again so that you don't have to go through the trouble of building these gems, which might be a little intensive on some of your laptops, which may not have enough RAM. And that is what I intend to do. After this session is over, I will build a new OVA and push it out. Let me fix the bundle problem first. So that will happen when the bundle finishes. This installation is what needs more memory, and that installation failed. That's what you saw, and that should not fail when the machine has more memory. It actually throttles for memory, and then it fails to complete that installation of that particular dep selector libgcode gem version 120. That's what we are running into. So it's a dependency that we have for these things that require that gem, and it needs to be locally built with native extensions. That is what this machine is building right now, as you can see in this screen. It is running glib compiler, GCC, and in 3 or 4 different processes, it is trying to build that gem for us, this version number 120, and compiling with native extensions. And you don't have to compile that. And you can see that my CPU, 3 of them are pegged 100%. It's heavy activity, and I have given it huge amount of RAM, so it should work and it should finish. I have no concerns that it will not fail. I'm pretty sure it will not fail because of a large amount of memory and 3 CPUs. So the build will succeed. And once that build succeeds, we will have these 3 gems available to us. At that time, you will see that we can proceed forward. So, briefly discussing while it builds, discussing this idea of what gems are, as we already talked about. These are Ruby packages, as you know, already available in this location called rubygem.org. And there are tons and tons of gems available. Next thing is bundler. What does bundler do? It basically goes to that Ruby Gems site and brings down the gems you need for the version you specify. Like I have specified these versions. Actually, these versions here in the gem file. That's what bundler is doing. It runs that software bundler. There's a little video for you if you like. Now, what the next we want to be able to do once those gems are available is we want to set up a tool that is called Knife. That's the tool we want to use. And let me briefly describe what that tool does. Like for use in the kitchen, we of course need the knife. And so this knife is basically a tool in the chef family. One of the prominent and dominant usage of this tool is to do remote execution. That's the dominant use case. You will run Chef remotely. What does that mean? It means you are here on your workstation and you run knife command here on the terminal. What this will invoke, and you will pass, of course, tons and tons of arguments to go along with the knife command. And that invocation of the knife command on this terminal will connect to your target. The target can be a bunch of machines in the cloud. And it will make Chef run here, wherever these target machines are. It will run Chef client on those targets. That is the idea behind this knife tool. It's a tool. It basically remote executes Chef. That is what we are installing in our kitchen. It is a tool in the Chef family. And that is what I am describing here. There are a few things that we need to be able to do once that thing finishes, which is knife solo init, knife solo prepare. So those commands we'll run and understand once the tool becomes ready. Or in fact, we don't have to wait for the tool to explain. So I'll see how the tool is getting set up. And let's see what it's doing. It is still busy 100% on one CPU, but the compilation is still going on. As you can see, it did not fail quite yet, which is nice. But it is likely to fail on your computers as well, because I know by design, I have kept the memory a little bit low just to accommodate a variety of computers that out there that people have. Not everybody has a large machine. So with that understanding, I have kept it a little bit low. And after this thing succeeds on my computer, I will make an OVA file and send it out to you, just like you have received the previous OVA. You will receive another OVA file, and that is what you should import and use inside, which will make sure that, oh, actually it succeeded. You can see that whatever thing was, it was called dependency selector gem that we had, this dep selector libg code gem with version 1.2.0 succeeded with building native extensions, which means all other gems came down and our bundle is complete. So that actually tells me something that I must tell you, is that on your computer, you will also run into the same exact issue, and it will also fail provided your RAM is limited. That is the root of the bottleneck. The problem essentially is coming from the bottleneck that not enough memory available for the bundle, the compilation with native extensions available on that virtual machine. That is why it failed the previous time. In this time, I made sure to add more memory and more CPU and more horsepower to that virtual machine. So it is actually a pretty darn good machine now. And you can see that the action completed. It installed three gem file dependencies, in total of 63 gems now installed. So a huge boatload of things came along, but we wanted only those three things, like 1, 2, 3. That's what we wanted. But it gave us a whole boatload of dependencies that came down along with it. So I am going to quit this performance monitor, go out, and I'm back in my cloud and I have the gems ready. Now, what I would like to do is actually tell you that we have actually installed this knife solo gem, which is what we intend to use in our installation to run the knife command. Now, what does that knife command do for us? That command will help us establish our kitchen. Our kitchen currently contains, how many files do you think we will have in this folder? Let's see, 2. So the file that I created by hand and this file called gemfile.lock. So let us understand what that file contains. So I will open that Atom editor again, and we will see now there are 2 files. One of them is the gem file that we initially wanted, but as a consequence of this bundle command, it created a lock. And that is essentially a map of dependencies of all the gems that are needed to make these 3 gems work correctly. And this is the map. It has the specification that version numbers required for every gem that we now have downloaded. There are a total of 63, as you can see in that list. This is a machine generated file, and it is available to us because we ran bundle command. Now this folder, we want to build our kitchen out. A kitchen is a place where we'll store stuff like cookbooks and other things, and we'll talk briefly about what those other things are. But I would like to actually begin creating our kitchen through a command that helps us create that kitchen. So in order to initialize our kitchen, which currently has only 2 files, I would like to run a command here. That command is solo init, knife solo init. It is used to create a new directory structure, basically the kitchen. And that is a standardized way of how we would like Chef to work for us. That's how most people use Chef, in a standardized hierarchical folder structure, directory structure. And instead of having people to remember that file structure by memory, we are going to use this tool called knife to generate and initialize. That is what this init command is, our kitchen. It will initialize our kitchen when we run this knife solo init. There's one more thing that I would like you to understand, is this concept of gem file, which I explained a little bit for you, but I did not tell you yet how to actually make use of that gem file in execution time of a gem. So execution of a gem, it requires a little bit of different syntax than executing that gem directly. And I will describe that simple thing by running a command. So you know we have in our example here, our gem installed that we have is 1203. That's the Chef gem. So in here, if you say Chef client, and please tell me the version number, what do you expect to see? You expect to see 1203, right? However, when I run Chef client and give me the version number, you will see something else. And you will be surprised. Why is that the case? I said, gem file, please get me 1203, but why are you not running 1203? You are running 1251, but I wanted 1203. What's going on? That's the question. So to help you complete the scenario of running the gems that you really, really want, as opposed to arbitrarily choosing to run a gem that you may not want, there is a way to run any command like this, any command, just like this command, but through the discipline of using gem file. So gem file, we had to install all the gems needed, and we did that through the bundle operation. But now the execution of those gems also need to happen through the bundle command. And that is when the correct version of gem used in the gem file gets executed. Otherwise, the biggest known version number available to the machine gets executed. And that is worth repeating. So if you just type chef client -v like here and enter, it will run the latest and greatest version available and installed on the box, which happens to be, in this case, 1251. But that is not what I want. I want 1203. So how do I get it? So you have to very specifically say bundle execute, and then say whatever you want, chef client -v. And when you run it like this, it knows to enforce the discipline of bundle in the gem file at the time of execution. So bundle exec is a prefix that you need to remember to use every single time. Bundle exec. That is something that you need to just remember to type before you type any of these commands that are used in the context of a gem file. Otherwise, it will ignore the gem file. So let us run it like bundle exec and then the same command, enter. You will now see it runs 1203. If you run it without that bundle exec, it will run 1251. And that is not what you want. So you want to have this discipline of typing bundle exec before every command, without which you don't know which version of Chef might actually run. You don't know which version of any other gem that might run, and you don't know why it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you will have no idea. So that is something you need to remember to understand, that to enforce discipline like needed in our gem file, you need to execute with this prefix. So remember that, bundle exec, that's a prefix. You just need to type it before a command, any command, so that it remembers to execute in the context of the discipline required by the gem file. Otherwise, it picks up what are the largest version installed and takes it. Having said, let us now initialize our kitchen. So there is this command called knife solo init. So let us try that command, knife version. And what do you think the version of knife will be? 1251. But that's not what I want. So I need to type these commands in bundle exec. So I need to take that knife solo init command. But before I type that, I need to say bundle execute and then knife solo init. And this way, I will absolutely be sure that the correct version of Chef and the appropriate version of tooling is used. So that is what I intend to use. So bundle exec knife solo init. And as soon as I do this, you will see that in my kitchen, which is the folder, I will have new files popping up just like that. So you will see new files pop up in the Atom editor as soon as I initialize my kitchen. Off we go. And something happened. which is complaining that I forgot to type a dot. Where do I install? So I need to install that kitchen in the current directory. You must specify a directory. Anytime, by the way, you will run into these problems. Anytime you run something and it gives you an output, something that reads something like this, look at the result. You must specify a directory. Use period to initialize the current directory. We are in the right location. We just have to initialize the current directory. So you must specify period, which means I forgot that, which means I should say knife solo initialize right here with a period and then enter. Now it does something for us. What did it do? Let's see. Okay, lots of things came along now in the kitchen. You can see them all here. And let us understand that. It says creating kitchen, creating a knife.rb in the kitchen, creating cupboards. That's a joke. That's what these people write sometimes, cupboards as in all these other folders. Setting a bookshelf, so more tooling. We'll use that tool next, bookshelf tool, which is a play on the word bookshelf. So up until now, you've seen that this is how you initialize a kitchen in the current folder, dot, period. And let us quickly go over the contents of that folder. As you can see in the Atom editor, there is a folder called dot chef. It's a critical folder. It contains a file called knife.rb, and we'll talk about that file momentarily. It's a very important file. Then there is a folder called cookbooks, which is empty, contains nothing except this empty file. A folder called data_bags, which is basically a place to store data, bags. A folder called environments, which is a place to store environments like that, nodes, roles, side cookbooks, and things like that. So let us identify these things one at a time after a short break. Right now we are at 6:57. So we will go over the contents of this particular folder to understand what cookbooks are, data bags are, environments are, nodes, and roles, and all these things. And that one critical file called knife.rb. We'll understand these details, but let's take a short break. So right now it is 6:57. Let us reconvene at 7:02. And I will bundle it up, this OVA file, and give it to you so that you don't have to actually have more memory allocated. And I will create that OVA package so you don't have to worry about adding more RAM and all that good stuff. You can leave the machine as is and just use that as it is available to you. And even 1 GB RAM should be good enough. That should not be causing any trouble to you as such. So that I will do after this session is over. It takes me a few minutes to create that OVA package. That is what I will then put that in the same BitTorrent sync, which has a new name, by the way, these days. The company has spun out of BitTorrent, and it's a new company called Resilio, resilio.com. That's the new name of the same thing. And that is what I'm currently using right now for synchronization of large files. Otherwise, downloading these files on 8 gigabytes will take forever. So you should be able to receive a file overnight, and that 8 GB package, OVA package, delete the old machine that you have, get a new package from me, and off we go. That's the easiest way to make sure that your machine building problem, bundling problem will disappear. That is what I intend to do. So are you guys back from break, I guess? Looks like we are muted. Okay. So I just talked to myself, I guess, in that case. So what I was going to ask you is, do you see my screen that has this Atom editor open right now with all these folders? Do you see that already?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is put these windows side by side with a notepad, and then draw some notes on what these actually mean from a usage perspective. So that is my idea, is to just quickly look at this editor and identify the top level folder structure, which is what we call the kitchen, right? That's the kitchen. The entire folder is kitchen. That's what we just created with this command called knife solo initialize my kitchen in this folder, the current folder, which is this folder. That's what we did. And this thing initialized basically a collection of folders for us. And so let us go look at that from top down. In that folder, we have a folder called .chef. This is a hidden folder because of the dot. The dot makes this thing hidden. So if you type in here, you will not find it. You have to type LSLA to show that .chef folder. It is hidden. For a simple reason that you want to hide it and put credentials in that file. So in that hidden file, in that hidden folder, which is basically a dot folder, in that folder, you have this file called knife.rb. That file contains how you connect, what are your keys and secrets, so AWS, DigitalOcean, Azure, Google, your tokens, your keys go in that file right here. This is where you will save it, in that file. And so that file is a critical file. It also describes that the cookbooks are stored in the folder called books and a folder called site cook, that the nodes are kept in the folder called nodes. So here is the nodes folder. That roles are kept in a folder called roles, the roles folder. And what is a role, what is a node, what is environment, what are data bags, and that is what I will describe now. So cookbooks, as you already know, is a folder that contains, guess what? Cookbooks. And you know what a cookbook is. You can get one from the market, or you can create your own. So when you create your own cookbook, it is customary to put that in this folder here. Whereas the cookbooks you get from the community, you put them in the cookbooks folder. And this typically goes in your cookbooks. These cookbooks that you create, you put them in this other folder called site cookbook, which is also referred to here. And the ones that you download from the supermarket, these are provided by the community. It is a good practice to keep them in the folder. That's the convention that people follow. So this folder here will contain the community-generated, downloaded cookbooks from supermarket, cookbooks from GitHub, cookbooks from your other team members that you, or from other project teams, not your team members, other project teams that might exist in your company. You will put them somewhere here. And when what you are modifying yourself and you are controlling for your particular location for your site, you put them in this other folder called site cookbooks. Similarly, when I describe this thing called, when you have, when this is you on your workstation, you run the knife tool on the workstation, and that does some things for you. For example, remote executing chef on a target. So when I say target, I actually mean some machines in the cloud. So those are targets. In chef language, they are called nodes. So the target basically is a node. That's what you target. So you have to have a reference to these nodes in the nodes folder. So to define a file containing every node, like here, and here, and here, and here. And these files that represent these nodes will go in the nodes folder, right there. Another example will be sometimes you have development environment, sometimes you have staging environment, sometimes you have testing environment, sometimes you have production environment, or a variety of environments, which is what you need to create and put that in this folder here, environment. And that environment folder will contain your description of your staging environment, development environment, testing, production, and you can name your own random environment. That is also okay. The use case basically is that when you switch or put a tag on a particular set of things, such as a node or a role or a cookbook or all that, for a given environment, that tag relates to the environment tag, env tag. If you mark something to be used only for development purposes, then all the things related to that environment will go only for use in development. It will never reach the customer. No. It is only for development purposes. So that's how you can classify. It's a method of classification of your infrastructure. When you classify your environment according to, you can say that, out of these machines that I have in my cloud, these 3 machines are dedicated to development. So call them dev, dev, dev environment. And these 15 other machines that I have in this rack, all of them are test machines. And those 330 machines I have here are my production machines. That is where the actual customers are hitting these boxes. They don't go to the test boxes, don't go to the dev boxes. So I'm classifying my infrastructure, tagging them accordingly, calling them and classifying them in different environments. And that environmental classification can happen in this folder. Sometimes I have this thing that I call DNA. And so you know what I call a DNA. So it is what you want to grow up to become, right? I want to grow up to become a MySQL server. Or I want you to grow up to become an Nginx server. Or something else, like some function in life, some purpose in life you're giving it. Purpose in life of the box. So you want to give that box a purpose in life, and that collection of all those things, all these DNA together, becomes your purpose in life, or in other words, your role. And that is what is stored in this folder here, the roles folder, that one. So we quickly discussed, except data bags, we quickly discussed almost everything except data bags and Burks file and git ignore and git keep. So I'll talk about those also. Data bags, as the name implies, you store data in plain text files basically. It is not a database, just a data bag. And so in data bag, what do you do? In fact, that folder name is not data bag, but it is data bags, plural. It is plural. So it means that inside that you will have a data bag number 1 or data bag for Nilesh, or data bag for Boeing. Things like that. You'll have names for these data bags. And so that is a data bag here. This is another bag. That's another bag. And these 3 bags are sitting in that folder. Inside that data bag, you might have a data bag item number 1. Data bag item. This is not database, by the way, this is data bag. All along it is bag. Data bag item number 2, like that. So you have items sitting in the bag, sitting in bags. So bags, bag, item. That's the structure. And you will see that folder structure building up inside that data bags folder. That folder. Here. This one. That's you will see, that's where you will see it will grow like this. Bag, your bag number 1, bag number 2, bag number 3, item number 1, 2, 3, like that. So you will have more bags and more items in there as we grow along. You will put simple data in those bags. What data? Like passwords, for example, is one good data. Username, passwords, group names, permissions, critical detail about your infrastructure. You will typically put them in data bags. Actually, in data bag items that you will put in the data bag, that you will put in the data bags folder, plural. So that's the scenario of usage of this folder, data bags. Now, there are a couple of things missing, and we'll discuss this Burks file the very last right now. But I want to close out on other things. Like we discussed the .chef folder, critical folder to store your credentials in that file called knife.rb. And it is important that you don't show it to anybody, this content of that file, because it contains your credentials. So you want to hide it. Cookbooks is the place where you store cookbooks, data bags. You just heard me talk about environments or classification of your infrastructure. Nodes is how you actually store the targets. That's where the chef will run. The target, when I say target, that's where you target those things to run chef on those nodes or machines. So a representation of something like that goes in that folder, nodes folder. And we'll talk more about with exact examples as to what goes in that file, in that folder. In roles, it is the DNA. That's where you will save DNA right in that folder. It is the purpose in life of that particular machine. That's what the role of that machine will become. And when you write your cookbooks, you put them in the site cookbooks folder. When you get cookbooks from the community, you send them in the cookbooks folder. That's the difference between community provided cookbooks and your self-generated cookbooks. Put them here if you created yourself. You put them here if they're generated by the community, and you download them. Now, let us see, there are a couple of missing files that I did not talk about. One of them is git keep, which is a git, but the name itself says something about git. So the idea about this git keep file, it's actually .git keep. The idea essentially is that if you put this entire kitchen in Git repository, it will ignore the folders that are empty. And by the way, right now, all the folders are empty, and we don't want them to be ignored because we want them. So that is why we have put an empty file called git keep in every folder that we want to keep. That's the purpose of that empty file, basically, is we would like Git to keep that folder even if it is currently empty. All these folders are empty, most of them, except .chef, which has a file, but cookbooks, databags, all of them are empty folders. They're just skeleton. We just created it. That skeleton we created using this command, knife solo init, right here. And so that skeleton is created. But if I put all of these guys in Git, in a Git folder like git initialize right here, and say that git add right here, and git commit, you will see that it keeps those folders like data bags, environments, nodes, roles, and site cookbooks because the git keep file. Otherwise, that folder will not be added to Git. But we want them to survive. Therefore, we have the git keep file. Let's try this exercise a little bit differently. And this time, I am going to erase any Git thing here. So right now, I'm going to get rid of the folder. I just removed my Git installation completely. I'm back to how it was to begin with. Okay, like this. That's how it began. So now what I want to do is create another folder called Nitesh. It basically is empty. You can see it here. And this folder does not have anything, not even a .git keep. So now I have that Nilesh folder, but it contains nothing, not even .git keep. Now I will do git init and git add and git commit, and you will see that every other folder is preserved, but Nilesh is not. You will see that Nilesh is not in this listing. Every other folder is. Why is that so? It did not participate in the empty folder. It ignored this empty folder because it is empty. There's nothing useful. That's why it did not participate in Git operations. So if you want to keep something, even if it is empty right now, this is the customary practice to name the file .git keep, and it needs to be there inside the folder for the folder to survive. Otherwise, it will disappear the next time you do a git checkout or do a git pull from a remote location. This Nilesh folder will disappear. So let me delete it now. So I'm deleting the Nilesh folder, which I created for example. It's gone. Now we have that Git repository, and it is in my folder, and we have all these folders, they are correctly known as the kitchen. This is our kitchen that we will work with. There is one more file that you may have seen, which is called gitignore. And can somebody tell me why do I want to ignore the cookbooks folder? Like this gitignore file basically will ignore anything in the cookbooks folder. As you can see here in previous attempt, in this example, you see it saved everything, but not the cookbooks folder. Why is that so? So it had data bags, environments, nodes, site roles, site cookbooks, but not the cookbooks, even though it had a git keep. It did not keep that because of gitignore. Gitignore explicitly tells you to ignore anything in that cookbooks folder. So it does not participate in Git. You don't want this folder to participate in Git. Can you tell me why? Like this cookbooks folder, you don't want it to be in Git. No. This folder, site cookbooks, yes, I want it to be in Git. Yes. I want it to participate in Git. This is what I create. My team creates it. This is obtained from the community, from that supermarket. So I don't want to keep it in my Git. And that is why we have the gitignore file telling explicitly, please ignore everything stored in that folder called cookbooks. Don't even want to keep a copy. Why?
Could it be because you don't want to push that to
Yes.
the Git repo?
Yes, exactly that. That is the exact reason why you don't want to push redundant work. You know, you're giving it to a team member. You know, you're giving them what they can obtain on their own already through the site called Supermarket, the community site. They can go download it themselves. Why do you want to give it a copy in the Git and make the Git repository fat and useless and big for no reason? You want to make it huge. That was a bad joke. I shouldn't have cracked that. But you want to make this cookbook repository. Why do you want to keep it in GitHub or Git? You don't need to. So the idea is other people on your team can already get those elements that you don't want to send them because they can get it directly from the supermarket. Why do you want to make this folder full of trash? I mean, it's not trash, but it is unnecessary redundancy. You don't want to send that over in Git pushes because they can obtain the whole thing for themselves and they might already have a local copy. And so why are you giving it to them?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the fundamental reason why you ignore cookbooks. So now, having done this part, let us now go to this next step, which is Burks file. And that is how your other team members will grab supermarket cookbooks automatically. Just like, you know, you've seen before, we go to a folder called, we edit this gem file. And then in that gem file here, we write down, you know, go to that location, get these 3 gems for me. Okay, got it. We'll go there and get it for you. Just like that, there is a construct called Burks file. Burks file, which is what we will use. And it will tell it, go to supermarket and get me these cookbooks, please. Name, version. And that is what we intend to do. And that is what this Burks file will be useful for. And we use the bundle command to run this and get a collection of all the gems downloaded and all useful. And we did that. Now we will do the same thing with Burks file with another thing called Burke Shelf. Actually, the command is just Burks. That's the command. The product is called Burke Shelf. It is a play on the word bookshelf. But if you name something a bookshelf and you try a Google search for it, what do you think will come up? It is impossible to find your software product, and therefore the team chose a slight variation, and now it suddenly pops up right on top, which also happens to be a gem, by the way, that we have installed. As you know, we have installed the Burke Shelf gem, which is available right here on that location, as well as on the GitHub and on Ruby Gems and everywhere else. So we'll use that gem. But for right now, let us understand what do we want to put in the Burks file. And that is the next step. So we have to use Burke Shelf to manage our cookbooks, like gem file and bundler to manage our gems, like Burke Shelf to manage our cookbooks, like gem file and bundler for Ruby Gems, Burke file and Burke Shelf for cookbooks and their dependencies. And so, like Burke Shelf, there is another tool called Librarian, which we'll use another exercise coming up next time. But for right now, we'll use this Burke Shelf tool for this exercise. And so next step, we'll have to identify how do we actually run the Burke file. How do you populate this particular file? This is not how you write it. This is wrong. So we need to basically delete it. This is the old name of this company that is now known as Chef. So the name of this company used to be OpsCode. And that's how the older way of referencing it is still in the code. For some reason, they have not changed it. So we'll ignore it. We'll just delete that name. This is not how we write these days. There is a supermarket that we should use. So we'll use that new name. But for right now, let us identify the place which is where we will have our Burks file. So in our Burks file, we will delete that line because that method is deprecated and we need to use supermarket. So we will have to update that Burks file, this one, to contain this one cookbook, like that. And so we are telling Burke Shelf, you know what, go to supermarket, get me the Nginx cookbook, please. And by the way, remember to get this exact version. Don't get random numbers. Don't get whatever you feel like. Get me what I want. And I want this, not 276, but I want 274. So, okay, it will go and get it for you. Exactly what you want. This version from that location. Supermarket, Nginx, 274. That's what you will see. And so we will now run Burke Shelf. How do you run Burke Shelf? Burks install. And before that, put a bundle exec. And so you will copy this and go to the terminal. And remember, you need to work in that folder, My Cloud. You need to work in your kitchen. And then, boom. It will go and do the thing and come back and tell you it's done. While it is doing it, it also figures out that there are certain dependencies apart from this Nginx 274. It also requires these bunch of other cookbooks. So it will get all these dependent cookbooks that you need and put them in the right place. Now, what is that right place? And I've been talking about this place called Cookbooks, which is where it should go. But I don't see anything here. What did Burke Shelf do? It's not in the site cookbooks either. Not in the cookbooks folder either. Where did it put? I know it tells me that it installed. It resolved the dependencies and then it fetching cookbooks from that location, supermarket, and I wanted this number 274. but it figured out that there are other dependent cookbooks that you need to have, so it grabs those also. But
So where do you put them?
Sorry?
Oh,
And so it grabs all these cookbooks and places them somewhere. We don't know where, but we need to find out. I know where it keeps, but it goes in that folder here. It's a hidden folder in your home directory. That's where it goes and stores them. And you can see it if you go to the home directory and then go to .bookshelf. It is a hidden folder. That is where all these cookbooks are sitting, by the way. All these. So these cookbooks are available to you, and they will become available in that folder when you need them, when you invoke them. They will come down and sit in the right location automatically. You don't have to go and grab them from here, copy and paste and all that. And that is one of the reasons why you don't want to put cookbooks folder in your Git commit, because you want to hide it, because every developer on your team, every tester, every operations person, everybody, every team member on their laptops, they will have a systematic method of managing all their downloaded cookbooks through Bookshelf. They will store apt version 261, apt version 270, apt 292, all these versions for the apt cookbook. Bluepill, Build Essentials, Chef's Handler, Chef's Server 1, 2, 3, 4. All these things are installed and loaded and kept safe in a common available location in the home folder, so that every project that you're doing, like you may have this My Cloud folder as a project, you may have 10 other projects. You do not want to be copying those cookbooks over and over and over in every single folder, making it big for no reason. And so you want to pull them down. Automatically, they will come down in the right location when you need them, but they are currently in this location, kept safe. And in this writing description, I have defined a method in which you can actually vendor those cookbooks and force them to appear wherever you want them. So you want them inside this folder in the kitchen, you can get them if you like. You just have to type a different command, Burks vendor instead, as opposed to the other command that I initially typed was Burks install, right? Bundle exec, Burks install. So this will install the cookbooks, but put them in that other folder, which is how it is supposed to be working. If you want these cookbooks to just appear on your local folder, you want to vendor them. This is again not necessary. This step that I just did is optional, not required. But I just illustrated to you that it is possible to vendor those cookbooks for you, and they are now available in a vendor folder called Burks Cookbooks. A new folder got created, Burks Cookbook, with all these cookbooks sitting right there. So you can drag and drop if you like, or use that folder as is, Burks Cookbook. That folder got created because you vendored. You basically think of it as vendoring from a vendor. So you're basically buying it from that vendor who's giving you those cookbooks. But this is open source, so it is free. These cookbooks are basically resolving the dependencies and using these cookbooks that you already have locally, and just it is copying, vendoring this cookbook to that location. So that location automatically receives all the cookbooks that you wanted to receive because you are vendoring. It's a different command, not required. This step is not required. And I am going to kill that folder that we now have. It is called Burks Cookbooks. We don't need it, so I'm going to remove it. But just wanted you to know that there is such a method that you can use to grab the cookbooks locally if you like to see them right there. Now that we have those cookbooks available to us and we know where to put them, we can now begin to define a target or a node. That node is where it will run Chef when you invoke it, which means I'm going to sit on my workstation and I will run knife, but I want to run this Chef thing remotely on some target. And in Chef language, a target is basically called node, which means I need to get some box somewhere, like this box, and I need to have Chef run right here. Chef should run on this box when I run this command, knife, on my workstation. It should remotely execute Chef on the target box, the node, for which I need a node. I mean, in our very first example, we just use this machine itself as the node, right? We just use that box and use it as a node and just had some fun with it. But that's not how in real life you will use. In real life, you will have to have some box in some cloud. This box that you need to get, and you can get a box from any of these companies. Like, you bring it, DigitalOcean, Amazon, Azure, whatever you want, and that's how you grab one box. So I will go and grab one box right now, create a droplet. That's how easy it is, right, to get a box. So you will go there and get a box ready, first of all. So here I am getting an Ubuntu box, the cheapest one, and put that in San Francisco. And by the way, I don't have my key there, so I need to give it my key. I delete my keys every time, basically, because I want to make sure that I'm giving a clear example. So I will go see if I have a key pair already. No, I don't. I have a days key there. I can use the days key if I like. Or if I don't have the IDRSA key pair, I can just generate one. And there now I have it. So now I have this cat. That's this public key now I have created just now. I will just copy that over, give it to DigitalOcean, new key. Here is my key. And this is called ID RSA and save. And that is how I'm going to get a box. So this will be Ubuntu, $5, San Francisco, ID RSA, one droplet, and this is going to be my cloud. The name I want to have for this exercise, my cloud. That's the name I'm choosing here, and then create. So I get a box. I need to somehow manage to run Chef on that box. That's what I intend to do. But for that to happen, I need to have the kitchen in the nodes section, need to have a file there that talks about that box. So describe your box here, please. That's what I need to do. And you have to also describe what do you want the box to do. And that is basically coming down to the fact that we have to put a run list. Like, what do you want the box to do? For right now, I want it to do nothing. And so this is how you write nothing. Run list, empty. My run list is empty. That's how you do nothing. Because it is empty, it will do nothing. And that's how you save that file. And here, I want to save that file in the nodes folder. So I'll go in there. So user my cloud nodes, and in there, I will have to name it. That node has to have a name. So this node that I just created, I call it my cloud. But that's the machine name in the DigitalOcean portal that I chose here, this name. And it now has an IP address, which is nice because I want to use that IP address. But that name is not a DNS name. So I want to assign it a DNS name. And I want to use the name web1.cloudgenie.us. That's the name I want to use. You can use any name you like. This is a DNS, so it is your control. So you decide what name you want to give. That's the name I chose to give. And that is why I'm going to go to my Cloudflare and log in and create a DNS entry. right there. In the DNS section, I will identify if I have Web1 already, and looks like I don't. So I will add a record for Web1 and the IP address that I have from DigitalOcean and save. So now I have Web1 pointing to that IP address which I got from DigitalOcean right there. Now I have a DNS name for this box. Okay, this box that I just created. So that name is not a DNS name, so I create a proper DNS name, and this is my name I chose, and I have assigned it an A record for this IP address, A record. So that just happened. Now I have a name for this box, a DNS name, and that also needs to be the file name that I will give to my node. .json. The name has to be .json, because what we are writing is a JSON description of the DNA. We are defining what that box will do when it grows up, and we are going to create a file in the nodes folder with a name that indicates the DNS name of the box. So this box now has a DNS name, and therefore I have chosen that name .json in the nodes folder, and I'm going to save it. So now I have a new node right there. And that node definition currently has an empty run list right now. It is a valid JSON document, and this basically indicates that we can now expand our run list to include some recipes like shown here. And that is what we will do. So what we have done up until now is found a box as a target that I want to use. And that becomes a node for me. So I get a box from somewhere like this and get its IP address, map a DNS name to it so that I can then connect to that box if I want to, using my public key, private key combination. And let's begin to test whether it actually is able to connect. So here, SSH root at web1. And off we go. And we got connected. That's a good sign that we have the box working okay. Just a sniff test right now. So we are waiting for the box to respond, and the box get connected to, and that's nice. But we don't want to go muck around with the box directly, not at all. So we will come out. And that I would like to repeat. We do not want to muck around with the box ourselves. We would like Chef to deal with it and let Chef handle it, manage it. We are not mucking with boxes. That's a fundamental thing to remember. You will never, ideally ever, touch a box directly. Let Chef deal with it. The moment you touch a box directly, it becomes dirty and deserves to be killed. That's how I think. I may be an extremist in how I think, but that's how I think it should be thought through. Because the moment a person is touching a box, it becomes dirty. You don't know what happened to it. You don't know who did what. You know, in a large company, you have tens and thousands of people. Random, employees touching boxes. You don't want that. You want to be having a very systematic, disciplined method of managing your entire infrastructure, your entire blueprint. You don't want any employee to go directly to a box like this and muck around there. Not at all, ever. And that may be extremism, but I think it's a good one. So out. We are not running any command there, because that's the thing that introduces what is known as entropy. You don't know, it generates disorder. You want your infrastructure to be very orderly, very systematic in a Git repository control and be administered through a system as opposed to people touching boxes directly. You don't want that at all. So no disorder, no entropy, no mucking around with boxes directly. I hope that is clear. Yes, it is an extreme position that I tend to take, but I think it helps. Especially happens in large companies. It really, really helps. So don't touch the box directly. You want Chef to manage it. You want a regulated, structured system to manage it, as opposed to some people in your team going and messing with it. You don't want that. So Web 1, we have it, DNS mapping, a name associated with the file name, with a run list defined in a empty run list like this. And that's a JSON representation of what that node file will look like. That's our first node. Now, we will expand that role that we have assigned to that run list. Slightly we'll expand. And maybe we will include an Nginx recipe right there. So we'll take an Nginx recipe insertion in that and just paste this thing. So as soon as we do this and save, then we know that our box that we are thinking of, this Web 1, needs to become an Nginx server, right? So this JSON saved in that file called web1.cloudgenie.us.json is our node definition. And it tells you now that it needs to become an Nginx server. Okay, we got that. Now you can modify this and do whatever you want it to happen by modifying the run list itself. You can just structure the box the way you want. And that, when you execute Chef using that list of run list, a list of recipes basically, this is the default recipe in the Nginx cookbook, by the way. So you can write it like this also. So this is the default recipe in the Nginx cookbook, is what is being referenced here. So in that JSON sits in the nodes folder right there.
Nilesh, this is Salam. I have a questions.
Yeah.
In Nginx, do I have to mention any version number there, or so if I put it in Nginx like that, is it going to be randomized?
No, it gets controlled from here.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay, so that's our run list in this example, and we should proceed next. So when we are doing next, what I'm describing in this is get this DigitalOcean droplet and all that. So I'll go next. I had already done it. You already know it. So you can skip that part. And then you have to basically prepare your node. Your node doesn't know how to run Chef, right? This node that we have, it has no idea what Chef is. It doesn't even know, just a Linux box, Ubuntu Linux. That has nothing to do with Chef. It does not know. So we need to tell, you know what? Hey, box, you need to, first of all, get ready for Chef, for which our knife command will come into play. And so we will play that knife command in a couple of different ways. So one of the ways that we know, as you remember, is this knife command can be used to initialize a kitchen, right? You've done it before. So we said knife solo, because we are using Chef solo, that's why knife solo. Knife solo init, initialize a kitchen in here, like right here. Initialize please, and it did for us. So that's the initialization process, but the subsequent commands are, there are three. Knife solo is common. The init word is, and this word will change. So other words are prepare, cook, and bootstrap. What does that mean? It means you have this knife solo prepare command, knife solo cook command, and knife solo bootstrap command. Now let us define these three things in simple English. What do they do? So you have knife solo prepare, knife solo cook, and Knife Solo Bootstrap. What do they do in English? In English, this will install Chef. In English, this will run Chef. In English, Bootstrap will install and run Chef. That's the only difference in between Prepare and Cook and Bootstrap, is that Bootstrap equals Prepare plus Cook. These two together is Bootstrap. Install Chef, run Chef, install and run Chef together. That's the three commands in addition to Knife Solo init that you've seen before. So you can identify what commands it actually does by running Knife Solo enter. And it will tell you what it can do. And it will show you all the 4 scenarios. It is a little slow right now, so it will come when it does. So what we intend to do is prepare and cook one after the other to see each of these 2 steps happening, and maybe in a subsequent step, we can do Bootstrap, which will install and run Chef in one shot. So that's this action. And it says the solo commands are Knife Solo, Bootstrap. Knife Solo, clean, meaning uninstall. Knife Solo, cook. Cook means run. So this Bootstrap command means install and run. The clean command means uninstall. So there's a clean command also, which you may not run quite often. Instead, you just get rid of the node itself. So you just forget the node. So the install and uninstall things are happening on that node we created, right? That initial, this box that we have. That's where these things will actually cook, run Chef, install and run Chef, uninstall Chef, prepare will install. Initialize will actually initialize the kitchen itself. It has nothing to do with the remote machine. Every other command here, we have these commands. Bootstrap is this command. Install and run. Clean is uninstall. Cook is run. It assumes that you already installed. It assumes that you already prepared. Prepare is install. And initialize is just create that folder. And the structure underneath, like this. All of these things. That's what initialize does. Empty folders created for us. And so now we will initiate a Knife Solo prepare step, which is going to be executed like this. So bundle exec, Knife Solo, prepare, root at, and here you can give IP address like this, or you can give the name web1.cloudgenie.us if you have created a DNS entry like I just did. So you can do both ways. I'll describe both ways to you right here. So one way would be to write like this: bundle exec Knife Solo and then prepare, followed by so 2 ways: bundle exec Knife Solo prepare, followed by root at IP address. Oh, not this. Root at IP address that I have from DigitalOcean. So I'll go grab the IP address from here and paste it right there. And then say that I want to use my key pair, which is -i and then -n web1.cloudgenie.us. That's one way to do it. The other way is a simpler way, and that is as simple as this. And you don't have to call out the IP address because DNS takes care of it. If you do not have a DNS, which is not the case because you have a domain name and you can control your DNS already, the step number one, this method of doing is very elaborate and boring and long. And it is easier to just create a DNS entry like this for that A record corresponding to the IP address for your domain. So say, for example, instead of cloudgenie.us, you will have to use cellcloudservices.com. That is also okay. If you have another domain, like help me out with the domain name, you have something like cloudprohub.xyz, that is also okay. So as long as you have a properly configured DNS name corresponding to the IP address that matches in the DNS record of your choice for your domain, an easier method is to run this step right here. It's a whole lot easier way of doing it, although you don't have to. And that is why here I describe the IP address method and then passing along a node name reference like this is the -n flag. This -n flag basically tells Chef that this IP address is actually this domain name. So just use that name instead and just look at this node file that I have for you here in the nodes file here. Look at that and use that for this run. That's what this thing does, -n option. If you have a DNS name configured correctly, you don't have to use it. You can just use a DNS and just type this command instead, which is what I will do now. So I'll copy that command, take it to my terminal here, and then paste it, run it. What do you think this will happen? It will prepare that box with Chef. What does that do actually? Install Chef. That's what you're looking at right now, happening right now. On that box, web1.cloudgenie.us, here, you are seeing some activity, which is basically installing Chef right there. And it is the version you wanted. See that? The version you wanted, 12.03, not from random version. Exactly what you want. That's what you will get. And that is how you manage a disciplined method of operations. You get exactly what you order for, and that's what you will get on your machines as well. So we now have this box, which is this name. I should rename it to web1.cloudgenie.us because that's the domain name. Now I have DNS name properly. So I should use that instead. So I just renamed it. And that's the box name. Now that I have a proper DNS name, I will use that. And that name is now prepared. Good. That still doesn't do much for us. If you visit that IP address, like if you take that IP address and open it in a web browser, nothing happens because there is no site running yet because we haven't actually run Chef quite yet. We prepared Chef, installed it, but we did not cook. We want to cook next. And so bundle exec knife solo prepare is what we did. The next step is to cook. So we'll cook it now. And here it is. Bundle exec knife solo cook. The same thing with a cook command. So we go back here and here and here and look. Our prepare command, we'll replace that with cook. And then you can run it either line number 1 this way or line number 3 this way, which is a whole lot easier. So I want to use the easier method because I have a DNS entry now. I'll take that line and this time I will go here and run, or rather I should say cook. So here is the cook command. And it is going to go to that box, log in as root, use this key, and run Chef in solo mode. So this bundle execution of knife solo command cooks that box. And you don't have to define what it is supposed to be doing because you already have called out in your node definition that you want it to become Nginx server. And that is exactly what you will get when you cook it. So let's cook. Boom. And by now, we try to open it. It doesn't open any website on that. We know because it is not yet set up with Nginx. We try web1.cloudgenie.us and it still shows the same problem. Site cannot be reached, refuse to connect and all that. And this is happening because the run is not complete yet. It is actually doing it right now, as you see. And it is now finishing install action and all that. And it will finish shortly, at which time we should be able to see success report. There we go. So we have a success. And now we can go back to this location, web1.cloudgenie.us and refresh and boom, Nginx showing up with a 404 not found because there is no content, but at least I'm happy to see a 404, right? This is probably the only case when you're excited to see a 404. 404 not found. I'm so happy to see that because it successfully did what we wanted it to do. There we go.
Okay, Nilesh.
Yes.
404, this is for HTTP. We don't have any URL, that's why?
Yeah, this is there's no content in that site. So the site is ready, it's served by Nginx, but nothing to serve. So
okay, 404 means is this error came from the server then?
Yeah, Nginx is sending that error there. I don't have anything to show you. Don't have anything to show you. So I'm showing you 404. And I'm happy to see 404 because Nginx is telling me that. You see that Nginx?
Okay.
So I'm happy to see that Nginx is running. You can actually go now muck around with the box directly if you like. Against what I've been saying all along, don't go muck with the box, but here we go. We'll just go muck with the box right there. And there is a ps-ef pipe grep Nginx. Do we have anything? Yes, there are 2 Nginx processes. And so that is what is running right there. Now here, what we can do is go further mucking and say cd/usr/share/nginx/html. And in that folder, I have this vi index.html. So we can change that. So I think the idea is to not touch boxes like what I am doing right now. That's a bad idea. Don't touch it. Don't touch boxes like this. Instead, do it through Chef. The reason is as simple as if you have 10,000 boxes, you cannot practically in your life log on to 10,000 boxes and fix something by hand. It is humanly impossible. And as cloud machines scale, you don't want to touch these boxes directly. Instead, you would rather manage it through a systematic method, such as the Chef example that you just saw. So that is a elaborate exercise, but we are just starting to, just starting to get a feel of how these things actually work. And you saw this thing 404 not found, and you were excited about it and all that. And there are more steps. We'll run. There are tons and tons of steps as we go along to help you understand. The way I have constructed this entire program is to help you comprehend what Chef is by doing stuff as opposed to just reading a book. Reading a book and that gets boring. So there are tons and tons of documentation available. Like here is Chef documentation. Yeah, Paul has a question. Can Chef be used to configure network components as well? Yes, why not? And you will see some examples, and even easier to do, I think, for network components will be Ansible. You will see some of those examples also. So there are tons and tons of documentation available, like here docs.chef.io should have a ton of documentation. But reading these things doesn't actually, for a first-time reader, it is mind-boggling to read all that documentation. It is really hard. And that is why I have constructed a series of these exercises, hands-on, that will help you get the idea. Once you have the idea, you can go back to read the doc. and then do whatever else you want and expand and extend. But that's my way of helping people understand what these tools do for us. And yes, they are immensely powerful, and yes, they're immensely helpful in accomplishing. Yeah, network is famous for manually configuring network components, correct. And so yes, so we'll do some examples, and then you can expand on those in terms of what you want to be automated. And yes, you can manage IP tables, firewall, and ports, and all these things, the nutty details of IP tables. You can do all of that through these tools. It is totally doable. In fact, there is, now that you talk about IP tables, there is an IP tables cookbook. And here it is. And so, yes, it will allow you to do whatever you feel like. It's on the supermarket for IP tables management, and off you go. Port mapping, port forwarding, this and that. It's complex. It's as complex as networking itself is. NAT routing, so enabling a device to act like a NAT device. You've done it before. You just chose a ready-made NAT device, but here you can convert any box into a NAT box like that. So star NAT -A pre-routing -I0 packet TCP dport 80 redirect to port number 8080. You can play around. It is as easy or as complex as you want it to be, but tools are available, and people have developed these cookbooks for you, and you thank them and you use their cookbooks. As simple as that. So here is the cookbook, the source code on GitHub, and that's just the IP tables example for using with Chef. Let us look at some IP tables example for Ansible. Here, more IP tables examples. So here's how you do it. IP tables chain input, source this, drop. IP tables table NAT, chain pre-routing, do this, do that. You need to understand networking to make use of these tools. But yes, these tools are totally enable you to do whatever the heck you want to do, literally. And they are done for you. You just have to use these things. And the best way to find out what you want to actually do is by doing with examples and then extending what you're doing slowly and sometimes rapidly as you learn. So with that, let us take a pause at this moment. I will now create a machine image of the machine that I have and give you a package containing that OVA file, which will cut down on the trouble that you are likely to run into if I ask you to build that bundle. If you build the bundle and if you have memory limitation on your physical machine, you are likely to encounter errors. That is why I bumped my RAM to 8192, fixed the problem, and now I'm creating an OVA file. This is going to be 8 GB download. It will come down overnight, and you will have it tomorrow. Inside that same folder, which is workstation, that's where you will see it. So what you want to do is properly shut down this machine like this, and then right click and remove your workstation like this. So you want to basically right click. I will not remove, by the way, but I'm just showing you what you need to do is to right click on the CloudGenius workstation, click the remove button, and delete all files, all of them, like completely delete. Remember to delete all files. That will get rid of the machine altogether. When you do that, then you will import the new file, which will come down overnight to you. And that is what you want to use. And then you import, and then you start. When you import and start, that machine will already have whatever bundle thing that I did. So you don't have to do it. If you have more memory, add some, and it will not cause you error. But I'm going to reduce the memory down to 1024 before I give it to you, and processors down to only 1024 MB and 1 CPU. That's how I will resume back to that level, and then create an OVA file like that so that you will not run into problems. So 1 CPU, 1024 MB RAM, okay. Now I'm going to generate an appliance. So here's how you generate. You don't need to know this, but I'm just showing it to you. How do you generate an OVA file? You basically say, you know what, create an appliance for me. Export an appliance based on my image that I have right now. You can specify the product is Cloud Genius workstation, the URL. These are cosmetic changes. You don't need to do this, but I'm. And the vendor, the vendor is Cloud Genius, and the vendor URL is. And the version number is 2016-06-24. And the description is Cloud Genius Workstation. Edit the description, the date wrong, save it. The license is edit. License is also not a technical requirement, but more a business thing. Grab that license from MIT License, which is a site which gets you language for MIT License. If you don't know this, you can be amused and find out. So here is the MIT License language that I use, open source language. So you have no problem in using it and distributing it further, but I'm just indicating that I created it. So, okay. And then I will save this file to my local computer. And instead of saving it in a local computer, I will just save it in that workstation folder itself, right there. It goes to the workstation folder by that name with this new date, which is here, 016-06-24, and save. It automatically saves in that BitTorrent sync, Resilio sync, and I start my export process. Off we go. And so this is how you export an appliance. It takes 2 minutes for me, and you will receive it in the next couple hours, no problem. Use this machine to run this exercise, which will cut down any issues that you might run into in bundling. If you have more RAM, you can bundle it yourself, no problem. Any questions?
Okay, Nilesh, this is Salam.
Yeah.
Okay, you want us to delete the machine I had it?
Correct. You will delete
Okay.
that.
So if I delete that, or whatever work I did, so it's going to be gone then.
Correct. What do you want to do in that case is you want to understand what do you want to save. You want to copy them away from that VM. You necessarily do not want to save anything of importance inside the VM. You always save good things that you want to preserve outside the virtual machine. Virtual machine is a sandbox. You know what a sandbox is? It is like
Yeah, I understand. Rather, if I create another machines to work on for the chef, that can be possible?
Yes. So these kids are playing, right? They're playing in a garden. And so you don't want to keep those toys inside the box because you want to keep the toys outside, right?
Correct.
So you want to keep your toys outside and clean up the whole sand, get a new box and put the toys back. That's what you want to do.
Okay.
Right? Don't put important stuff in the sandbox.
No, the reason I'm asking you, there's some work I did in my old machine which is not complete yet.
Right. So what is that work that you want to save?
Like, you know, the days practice.
Oh, days. Okay, days. Don't worry about days. We'll do it again. We'll do it 5 times until you get it. Don't worry about it, right?
Yeah, I have done some work on AWS. So
I have done it. I have done the days exercise maybe more than 10 times, and you will do it like 3 times. You will get it. Don't worry about it. Ignore the previous work. Just scratch and delete and move. That's how you should think when you're dealing with cloud. Make it repeatable. So the more you do it 1 or 2 times, you will really understand what is it that is most important. And you stay focused on that thing. and then you can repeat. In fact, I would like you to eventually automate the entire deployment, so you don't have to do this by hand. The more you do by hand, the more likely you're going to make mistakes. And so try.
I understood. You want us to delete that machines to generate some space.
No,
right?
not space. No, not space. It's not about space. It's about the name, Cloud Genius. The name is taken. The name Cloud Genius is taken, so you want to choose a different name.
Okay.
It will cause trouble if you do not delete. That's my concern. That's why I'm suggesting you right-click and remove and delete all files. Otherwise, like Munir ran into a problem on his Windows machine, and so he needs to clean up that old items. That's why it's getting stuck. And we can fix the Windows problem later. But the core idea is if you delete all files, it removes a clean namespace. Not about hard disk space. It is namespace.
If I generate another machine in the same box, that could create problem.
Yes, with the same vendor. So if you're taking from me and another machine from another same machine from me, you will have name conflict.
Oh, okay.
You can get a machine.
So
I have 2 machines. I can get 3 machines or multiple machines from multiple locations. But if I get the same exact machine and try to install it 2 times, it will cause name conflict.
Okay.
So it is better to just preserve your data, your work away, and don't store stuff in the sandbox.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how to save those boxes. Can I save these boxes in my hard drive in the computer?
What do you want to save? I'm not sure I understand you.
Like the machine I'm working on. That's my concern.
So
if you want me to delete it,
yeah, delete the whole thing. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Delete the whole thing. Start from scratch.
okay.
Better way to learn.
All right.
It is a better way to learn. Really, really understand. You will not repeat your mistakes, and you will do a clean straight shot at the whole thing. You will really understand. I know it is hard to delete your work.
Yeah, I did spend a lot of hours on those.
I know it is hard, but
yeah,
that's how life is. And so it is better to just clean and restart. Gives you a whole lot leverage in learning. If you really want to do it with me. If you feel that need, and if you want to save some time, do it with me. I will expedite.
Thank you, Nilesh. I trust you.
I don't want you to feel alone as you do exercises. So anytime you feel like you need help, you come online.
Okay.
But please delete.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
No problem.
So this OVA is coming down in about a few minutes. You should start seeing it coming down, and use this new one for this chef exercises.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.